Chapter 1132, 3 days later Hualala. The crisp melody of tea flowing into a cup filled a tranquil room. Hall Master Xing placed the teapot in his hand down before passing a fresh cup of tea over to Elder Qi. Elder Qi took a sip of it, and his eyes immediately lit up. Excellent tea. It's no wonder it's worth such a huge sum. Its quality is definitely worth the fortune spent on it. Hall Master Xing had specially bought these cloud mist flower tea leaves from the Hongyuan Empire. Back then, he had thought that it was a little pricey, and he had only intended to give it a try. However, upon tasting it, he realized that it was really worth its price. It sure is fine tea, isn't it? Hall Master Xing nodded in agreement as he sipped on his cup of tea. Over the past 3 days of hard work, he had managed to further reinforce his cultivation, bringing his state of mind and primordial spirit to a whole new level. At this rate, he would be ready to face the lightning ordeal by the time it fell. Looking at the elder before him, Hall Master Xing asked, "Elder Qi, how has your cultivation been going recently?" The Combat Master Hall's spirit-gathering formation is indeed formidable. Just by cultivating for a short 3 days, I managed to reinforce my half-leaving aperture realm cultivation, Elder Qi said with a stroke of his beard. He had to admit that the training facilities within the Combat Master Hall were truly impressive. If it had been anywhere else, it would have taken at least several months before he fully reinforced his half-leaving aperture realm cultivation. But here, he managed to do it within just 3 days. Admittedly, it would be quite some time before he was ready to push for a breakthrough to leaving aperture realm, but with his body having adapted to his current level of cultivation, he would be able to draw forth incredible might at a wave of his hand. It's only because Elder Qi has a strong foundation. Not just anyone is able to utilize the formation to its full potential as you did, Hall Master Xing remarked. Ultimately, the formation only played an auxiliary role in one's cultivation. What was more important was the cultivator himself. Elder Qi had braved through many threatening situations, and this had elevated his state of mind to a transcendental level, allowing him to advance his cultivation swiftly. In fact, Hall Master Xing suspected that the other party might even be able to clear the trial of inner demons easily. Choosing not to dwell too much on the topic, Elder Qi asked, "How has Sun Shi been doing recently?" He had been wanting to formally pay a visit to his benefactor to thank him, but in the past 3 days, he had found that the latter had been working even more diligently than him. In fact, there was hardly anyone who had caught a glimpse of him in the Combat Master Hall. "You know, I really have to admit that Sun Shi is a true genius." Hearing that question, Hall Master Xing recalled the various reports he had heard over the past 2 days, and his eyes lit up in agitation. Genius. UN. The first place Sun Shi visited was the Fist Division. I presume that you should have heard of the strength-assessing fist pillar there, right? Hall Master Xing asked. Elder Qi nodded. The existence of the strength-assessing fist pillar was no secret in the Qingyuan Empire. In fact, there were quite a few people who would visit the Fist Division in hopes of borrowing it to assess their current strength. It was a Saint-tier artifact, and it could accurately gauge one's punching strength. The record for the strength-assessing fist pillar for Saint Tu Dan was left behind by Combat Master Wang Ce 8,000 years ago. Combat Master Wang Ce was born with incredible strength, and he went on to cultivate the art of drawing oceans and the strongest defensive secret art of our Combat Master Hall, thus strengthening his zhenqi and physical body to an unbelievable level. Not only that, he is also an avid fist practitioner. Over the years, he refined his fist art to an unprecedented level. Yet, he only achieved a score of 18 in the trial. On the other hand, with just 2 hours of cultivation, Sun Shi broke the record and attained a score of 88. Even as he spoke of those words, Hall Master Xing's eyes could not help but widen in disbelief as he imaged the situation in his head. It was not without reason that achieving a record was considered a great honor. It could only be achieved by pushing one's body to the very limits, achieving a level that could be considered very close to the limit of a human. As such, breaking a record was never an easy feat. Those who did succeed in breaking a record would also only achieve a score slightly higher than the previous record. Yet, that fellow actually managed to clear the record with a score several times the previous score. This was truly unbelievable. You said that he attained a score of 88. Elder Qi's lips twitched. Indeed. I was astonished by the score, too, so I went to look for him to ask him about the matter. But he said. At this point, Hall Master Xing suddenly shook his head, and a look of utter defeat surfaced on his face. What did he say? He said that he attained a score of 88 because he felt that it was an auspicious number 1. His pockets have been running dry recently, and he hoped that this auspicious omen could change his luck a little. Hall Master Xing replied hoarsely. Elder Qi. And after he was done with the fist division, he went on ahead to the palm division. Hall Master Xing suddenly fell silent at this point. It took a long while before he was able to carry on. As you might know, the Combat Master Hall's palm techniques can be divided into 18 types, such as soft and gentle or hard and forceful. In order to assess one's comprehension of a certain palm type, the palm division has a trial guarded by 18 puppets. Usually, clearing even the first puppet is a difficult feat for most combat masters, and yet, after he entered, he immediately triggered all of the puppets into action, and with a palm each, he defeated all 18 of the puppets. All in all, it didn't even take him 10 breaths. He defeated all of the puppets with a palm each? Elder Qi widened his eyes in shock. Indeed. More importantly, the palm type he used corresponded perfectly to each of the puppets. In other words, his palm art changed 18 times within just a short 10 breaths. Hall Master Xing continued. How is that possible? Elder Qi could not help but shudder upon hearing those words. As the wrist was one of the most flexible parts of a human body, palm arts tended to be one of the more complicated and profound battle techniques. Using a gentle palm art and a forceful palm art drew on vastly different strengths, and an abrupt switch between the two could easily lead to severe injuries. Yet, to change to 18 different types within just 10 breaths. Was this really a feat that could be pulled off by a human? Was the other party's body forged of metal, making him impervious to the backlash from the abrupt switches? If it had been Elder Qi himself doing it, he had no doubt that his meridians would have ruptured. The true shocker has yet to come. You should know of our Guardian division, right? Hall Master Xing asked. Of course I do, Elder Qi replied with a nod. The Guardian division is known for its divine hammer, which is capable of analyzing the flaws of a cultivator's body and tempering them through hammering, thus enhancing one's defenses. Once all 1,296 acupoints have been tempered, even blades will struggle to slice through one's skin. Through it, the Guardian division has developed generations of formidable combat masters. If the weapon division was the strongest spear in the Combat Master Hall, the Guardian division was definitely the sturdiest shield of it. Those who could master its heritage would be nigh indestructible on the battlefield. Putting aside arrows, even saint-tier weapons would hardly leave a mark on them. Just like the resilient cockroaches, they were a fearsome force regardless of where they went. Indeed. The Divine Hammer is a saint intermediate tier artifact, and it has exceptional capabilities in tempering the human body. However, its strikes produce excruciating pain that permeate deep into the bones, causing normal combat masters to be unable to even withstand a minute of its tempering. Even I am unable to last more than 5 minutes. But when Sun She entered the Guardian Hall to allow his body to be tempered by the Divine Hammer, Hall Master Xing clutched his forehead and exclaimed incredulously, he actually fell asleep. He fell asleep. Elder Qi nearly spurted blood. He said that it was simply too comfortable, so he ended up dozing off. Honestly, if not for the fact that we were worried for his health and dragged him out, he might have just slept for several days straight in there. Hall Master Xing said helplessly. When he saw saliva flowing from the corners of Sun She's face, he had nearly fainted from horror. Such excruciating hammering, and the other party could actually think of it as a mere massage and relax from it. It was truly inconceivable. After he woke up, he headed to the footwork division. In the trial of footwork, there are a total of 122 hidden mechanisms. As soon as one steps into the trial, one will trigger the mechanisms, resulting in a relentless wave of attacks. The further one proceeds into the trial, the more complicated the attacks become, and the harder it is to dodge them, Hall Master Xing explained. Elder Qi nodded in response. The trials of the Combat Master Hall's 10 divisions were deeply feared in the Qingyuan Empire, and this was especially so for the trial of footwork. It assessed one's reflexes, speed, judgment, and many other aspects. If one was lacking in any of those, one would be struck before one knew it. Before entering the trial of footwork, I earnestly warned Sun She about the difficulty of the trial for fear that he would be injured by it. Yet, who could have known that? He walked in and out of the entire trial, but he didn't even trigger a single one of the hidden mechanisms. Thus, I forcefully activated all of the hidden mechanisms as soon as he entered the second time around, filling the entire trial with weapons and threats. Yet again, he walked in and out, but he still didn't encounter a single thing. Hall Master Xing looked at the sky with a look of despair and sighed. It was then that I realized that he was simply too fast. Such that even before the hidden mechanisms could do a single thing, he had already passed by all of them. Even the hidden mechanisms didn't have time to react. Elder Chi's body trembled in disbelief. The hidden mechanisms were controlled by a formation within the trial, and they would be triggered as soon as one entered the vicinity of the trap. Yet, to move so fast that even the mechanisms did not have time to process his existence. Just how fast did he move? At such speed, the other party was capable of killing him before he could even perceive the other party's existence. Indeed, the more Hall Master Xing spoke, the deeper the bitterness on his face became. To be able to become the head of a regional combat master hall, it went without saying that he was an incredible genius in his time too. With his talent, he thought that he could easily reach levels beyond his peers as long as he were to put in hard work. But upon seeing Sun She, he suddenly realized that his talent was really nothing at all. Before the other party, he was like dirt before the brilliant sun. Just by strolling around in each division for less than 4 hours each, he was able to accomplish achievements that were unmatched by any predecessors and probably by many future generations to come as well. Genius was no longer sufficient to describe him. In fact, even monstrous seemed to be a little inadequate. On the other hand, after hearing Hall Master Xing's story, Elder Chi's mouth was wide open. He had thought that even if Sun She was able to make some advancement in his fighting prowess over the past 3 days, it would surely have been minimal. No one could have imagined that he would be able to cook up such a huge commotion. It took a long time before Elder Chi was able to calm down his agitated mind, and taking a deep breath, he said, "It seems like you have really chosen the right person this time around. Sun She shouldn't have any problem dealing with the huge trouble you spoke of." After the past few days of interaction with Hall Master Xing, he had learned what the huge trouble was. For a student faction of a Tier 1 Empire's Master Teacher Academy to be able to force their Combat Master Hall to such a desperate state, it had to be said that the rumored Principal Zhong did live up to his reputation. Even though he had never met Principal Zhong in person, just by looking at the strength of the Shenxian faction, he knew that it would be unwise to underestimate the other party's strength. Indeed, I was still worried if Sun She would be able to match Principal Zhong, but honestly, after seeing what Sun She has accomplished so far, I am really unable to fathom an opponent who would be able to match him. After venting out the shock he had accumulated over the past few days, Hall Master Xing finally felt as if a huge burden had been lifted from his heart, and a smile returned to his lips. Having seen the Shenxian faction's strength with his own eyes, it was inevitable that he was apprehensive about going against an opponent like Principal Zhong. However, after witnessing the peerless strength that Sun She had displayed, all worries had vanished from his mind. If a 6-star master teacher like Principal Zhong could defeat even a monster of Sun She's caliber, the Combat Master Hall might as well be replaced with the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. That's good. I am also interested to see Sun She using his strength to surpass the undefeatable legend of the Hongyuan Empire. Elder Chi nodded with a smile. Taking a glance at the sky outside, Hall Master Xing said as he stood up, looking at the time, the members of the Shenxian faction should be arriving very soon. Let me invite Sun She over. Today was the day that the Combat Master Hall would be holding an exchange with the Shenxian faction, and the latter should have been on their way over at that moment. The Shenxian faction was a huge headache, but Hall Master Xing did not think that they would lose in the exchange. After all, there was far more to a battle than just combat skills. Let me head there with you, Elder Chi said as he stood up as well, and they began making their way out. Shortly after they left the room, Division Head Liao walked up to them. Noting that Division Head Liao was alone, Hall Master Xing asked with a frown, "Where is Sun She?" He said that it was still early, so He went to the Soul Division first. Division Head Liao replied. Soul Division? Hall Master Xing froze for a brief moment before his face turned ghastly pale. The trial of soul in the Soul Division is managed by the Saint 4 Dan Chrysoprase Soul Beast. Our Combat Master Hall had to pay a heavy price to invite it over. This is bad. Chrysoprase Soul Beast. Elder Chi pondered for a moment. That Saint Beast is indeed born with a powerful soul, allowing them to easily knock out anyone. Are you afraid that Sun Sha will be knocked out ahead of the exchange? That's not it. I'm afraid that he will tame the Chrysoprase Soul Beast. Hall Master Xing exclaimed anxiously. Elder Chi. Chapter 1133. He started it. If the Heart Division was the most mysterious division of the Combat Master Hall, the most bizarre division was probably the Soul Division. In the trial of soul, a cultivator could temper their soul. However, a moment of carelessness could potentially place one in a disoriented state, temporarily robbing them of their ability to think rationally. Zhong Xian pushed open the door and entered the trial. As soon as he took a step in, he immediately heard a slight moaning sound by his ear, as if an aggrieved ghost was crying beside him. That crying seemed to capture the entirety of one's attention, causing one to forget one's initial purpose. Zhong Xian frowned as he halted his footsteps. It's a type of demonic tune. He had encountered a situation similar to this back at the Qiu Wu Palace as well. When used in the correct circumstances, demonic tunes could prove to be extremely dangerous, rendering one incapable of discerning fiction from reality. However, against Zhong Xian, a cultivator of the Heaven's Path divine art, its effects were minimal. Driving his zhongqi around his body, the effects of the demonic tunes immediately vanished without a trace. Through paying closer attention to the moaning sound, he was able to determine the general direction it was coming from, so he began heading in that direction. The trial of soul was significantly larger than the trial of inner breath and trial of martial arts, spanning a radius of roughly 50 meters. However, as it was completely dark, it was impossible to determine where one was heading. Even one's spiritual perception was inhibited by the formation within, leaving one unable to perceive too far ahead. Slowly proceeding forward, Zhong Xian advanced for around 20 meters before his body abruptly jolted slightly. An oppressive pressure had suddenly assaulted him, seemingly attempting to tear his soul apart. A soul attack. Zhong Xian was taken aback for a moment before coming to a realization. It seems like someone is controlling the trial. If it had just been a simple trial, it was impossible for the formation to realize so swiftly that the demonic tune was not working and resort to a soul attack instead. For most cultivators, such a soul attack would cause them such excruciating pain that they would not be able to move at all. However, for Zhong Xian, such a soul attack was truly trivial. Putting aside the fact that he was protected by his Heaven's Path zhongqi, just the sheer size and strength of his soul made that pressure completely ineffective on him. The more Zhong Xian advanced forward, the greater the pressure became. At this point, even a Saint 3 Dan cultivator would have already succumbed to the immense pressure. Taking another 2 steps forward, Zhong Xian finally identified the source of the pressure, and he chuckled softly. It'd be rude if I didn't reciprocate the favor to you. Why don't you try mine? Zhong Xian's voice was not too loud, but it sounded clearly throughout the trial. The following moment, an overwhelming surge of soul energy burst forth from his glabella. Even though he did not have any soul cultivation techniques beyond Saint Realm, the soul tempering that he had undergone during the Saint Ascension ordeal had condensed his soul considerably, such that it had assumed a lucid crystalline form. With the enhanced strength of his soul, he was able to exert a pressure many times greater than before. Hong Long. In an instant, it was as if the air had turned as viscous as mercury. An incredible pressure burst forth, directed toward the source of the soul. Bam! Catcher! The loud thud reminiscent of something falling heavily to the ground, accompanied with the sound of many things shattering simultaneously, echoed resoundingly in the air. At the same time, the ground also tremored intensely. It was true that the other party's soul was powerful, but it was still severely lacking compared to his. A soul attack. Who are you? The next moment, a furious voice boomed in the room. Following which, Zhong Xian saw a massive saint beast walking out of the shadows. That saint beast was probably the one who had attacked him earlier. Under the immense pressure exerted by Zhongxian's soul, it had probably lost its balance for a moment and fallen to the ground, shattering many things beneath it. You are a chrysoprase soul beast? Upon taking a look, Zhongxian matched the distinctive traits of the saint beast before him with the books he had browsed through, and he could not help but frown. The chrysoprase soul beast was a rather peculiar saint beast. Unlike most saint beasts, which relied heavily on their superior physical bodies in combat, the chrysoprase soul beast specialized in soul offense instead. Blessed with an innately powerful soul, it could easily produce hallucinations and leave its opponents in a disoriented state. It was an extremely rare beast, and not even the Beast Tamer Guild had seen many of them in its entire history. It was rather unexpected to see this rare beast in the Combat Master Hall. This knowledge swiftly flashed through Zhongxian's mind before he answered the other party's question. I am a master teacher who is here to challenge this trial. You are a master teacher, the chrysoprase soul beast snorted. Deep hostility flickered across its massive eyes as it sneered. How could a master teacher possibly be skilled in the means of the soul oracles? Speak, who are you? Zhongxian was stunned for a brief moment after hearing those words, but he swiftly recovered and replied with a smile. Soul oracle? You must have misunderstood me somehow. The heritage of the soul oracles had vanished from the master-teacher continent several dozen millenniums ago. As such, not even master teachers would be able to identify it with certainty even if he utilized the means of a soul oracle before them. He had not really thought that the chrysoprase soul beast would be able to recognize it with a single look. It was not a crime to inherit the heritage of the soul oracles, but ultimately, just like poison arts, soul arts were viewed as unorthodox and depraved, and they were deeply feared throughout the master-teacher continent. In order to avoid trouble, it was best for Zhongxian not to admit to it. Hearing Zhongxian denying the matter, the chrysoprase soul beast scoffed coldly. Don't bother lying to me. I have seen soul oracles in action before, and I know their means very well. The next instant, Zhongxian suddenly felt overwhelming soul energy crushing heavily down on him, seemingly trying to smash him into smithereens. I was just born with a powerful soul. I am not a soul oracle, Zhongxian replied with a frown. The pressure that the other party weighed down on Zhongxian like an immense mountain, threatening to crush him into bits. Any cultivator who had yet to reach primordial spirit realm would surely have caved in to such pressure instantly. However, to Zhongxian, it was truly nothing at all. Seeing that his soul attack was completely ineffective against the young man before it, the eyes of the chrysoprase soul beast narrowed slightly, and it harumphed coldly. Soul oracles are capable of drawing of their souls out and surviving independently. The truth will be clear once I shatter your physical body. With a furious roar, it abruptly leaped forward, and a massive claw flew toward Zhongxian. Sila. The furious momentum of the claws produced a sharp, shrill sound, leaving one's hair standing on end. It felt as if it would mercilessly rip anything before it in two. Not expecting the other party to suddenly launch a lethal assault against him, Zhongxian's eyebrows knitted together in displeasure. His feet swiftly took a few steps backward with amazing agility, thus dodging the other party's assault perfectly. Over the past 3 days, Zhongxian had made his way through the 10 divisions of the Combat Master Hall and collected whatever books they had in them. With his newly collected books, he was able to compile several higher-tier Heaven's Path battle techniques. Regardless of whether it was the might of his fists, the strength of his palm, or the sturdiness of his defenses, they had been elevated to a whole new level. If he was only a match against primordial spirit realm cultivators 3 days ago, the current him could be said to be invincible among primordial spirit realm cultivators. Or to put it in simpler terms, any cultivator who had not reached half-leaving aperture realm would not be a match for him. And among all his battle techniques, the improvement in his movement technique was the greatest. After collecting all of the books in the footwork division, he had finally managed to perfect the one dan of the Unbound Voyager into a Heaven's Path battle technique, and he had immediately cultivated it on the spot. It was through the Unbounded Voyager that he was able to move so fast that not even the hidden mechanisms had been able to perceive his presence. Where do you think you are going? Seeing that the young man had escaped from its claws, the chrysoprase soul beast bellowed furiously as it raised its claws once more. A formation whirred into action, and in the blink of an eye, the trial of soul was completely sealed. There was no way to escape anymore. Voila! After sealing the surroundings, the chrysoprase soul beast immediately launched another series of attacks against the young man before it. On the other hand, after dodging several lethal attacks from the saint beast before him, Zhongxian's patience finally wore thin, and he shook his head. If a fight is what you want, a fight is what you'll get. As his figure blurred, Zhongxian appeared by the side of the chrysoprase soul beast in the blink of an eye before shooting a powerful fist toward the latter. Peng! Under the staggering might of Zhongxian's fist, the chrysoprase soul beast's figure retreated swiftly before crashing heavily into the roof above. Its figure then plummeted heavily back to the ground, and a huge pool of fresh blood flowed out of its mouth. So weak. Zhongxian was startled by how easily he had managed to subdue the other party for a moment before he recalled the unique trait of the saint beast. Chrysoprase soul beasts were blessed with powerful souls at birth, but their physical strength and resilience could only be considered average, possibly only at the level of an ordinary cultivator. There was no way it could withstand the might of his Heaven's Path fist art. As such, with just a single strike, it was already severely wounded. Zhongxian shook his head. I accidentally used too much strength. Even though the other party had tried to kill him, he was ultimately still the guardian of the Trial of Soul. It would be hard for him to explain this to the Combat Master Hall if it died after facing him. Furthermore, it was due to the other party's doubts that he was a Soul Oracle that it had made a move on him, and considering the association of the Soul Oracles with the otherworldly demons, its actions were not completely unjustified. Shaking his head, Zhongxian slowly walked toward the chrysoprase soul beast. I guess I'll have to try saving it then. While making their way toward the Soul Division, Division Head Liao said with a casual wave of his hand, Hall Master Xing, the situation can't be as exaggerated as you make it out to be. The chrysoprase soul beast has a gentle personality. It's unlikely that it will get into a conflict with Sun She. The chrysoprase soul beast was the saint beast responsible for managing the Trial of Soul. While it would use demonic tunes and soul pressure to temper the challenges, it was actually a mild-mannered and meticulous individual. In the time that it had managed the Trial of Soul, there had never been a single mishap. Furthermore, it was not like Sun She had intentionally entered the Trial of Soul to wreak havoc. No matter how he looked at it, the chances of a conflict breaking out between the both of them was truly unlikely. I honestly hope for that to be the case, too. You also know how far I had to go in order to convince the chrysoprase soul beast to become the guardian of the Trial of Soul. I can't allow anything to go wrong at this point, Hall Master Xing said with a bitter smile. He also wished that nothing bad would happen, but Sun She was simply too exceptional an individual. Every single time he challenged a trial, he would either break several records or cause a huge ruckus. Given so, he could not help but worry that the latter would somehow end up fighting against the chrysoprase soul beast. The Combat Master Hall could not have either of them getting injured at this point in time. The three of them swiftly arrived at the Soul Division and entered the Trial of Soul. Pushing open the door, they stepped into the trial, and the very first thing they saw was a giant chrysoprase soul beast lying on the ground with its tongue sticking out from its mouth. Blood was trickling down from the edge of its mouth, forming a crimson puddle on the ground. Sun She, what happened here? Not expecting his worst fears to actually come true, Hall Master Xing's cheeks twitched uncontrollably. At this point, he really felt like crying. Hearing those words, Zhongxian turned around and saw the trio. A sheepish look crept onto his face as he asked, "Why are you all here?" "We were afraid that you might get into a conflict with the chrysoprase soul beast." Hall Master Xing swiftly tried to mediate the situation. "I know that it might have attacked you, but that is its responsibility as the guardian of the Trial of Soul. It isn't trying to pick on you or anything." He had rushed there in hopes of preventing any conflict between the duo, but he had ended up being a step too late. Furthermore, from the looks of it, it seemed like the chrysoprase soul beast had been done in real bad. It did not seem like it would recover anytime soon. If only that were the case. Seeing Hall Master Xing speaking up on behalf of the chrysoprase soul beast, Zhongxian shook his head. He was just about to begin explaining what had happened previously when the eyes of the chrysoprase soul beast suddenly opened wide. It exclaimed anxiously, "Hall Master Xing, don't listen to his word." His Asu, but before it could finish its words, a certain young man had already sunk his feet into its face. Peng! Its words were stifled back into its throat as its massive body flew several dozen meters away before crashing back onto the ground. The floor of the Combat Master Hall was constructed of an extremely resilient material, but the impact of the chrysoprase soul beast's fall still created a huge web of cracks on the ground. Its teeth plopped all around the ground as its head twisted to the side. It had fainted. Sun Sha, not expecting the young man to kick the chrysoprase soul beast flying right before their eyes, Hall Master Xing and the others were stupefied. Panicked, they quickly turned to the young man, only to see the latter looking back at them with a helpless shrug. If I were to say that it made the first move, would you believe me? Hall Master Xing. Division Head Liao. Elder Qi. Chapter 1134. Who is the opponent whom I need to defeat? Hall Master Xing and the others felt as if they were on the brink of insanity. We saw you kicking the chrysoprase soul beast in its face with our own eyes. You nearly killed it with that blow. And yet, you are telling us that it made the first move. Has anyone ever spouted such bullsh*t before? Just how on earth did it offend you that you have to go so far against it? Was there a need for a genius like you to get so serious against a beast? Sighing deeply, Hall Master Xing explained, Sun Sha, if the chrysoprase soul beast has offended you in any way, I beseech you to forgive it. The Combat Master Hall had to pay a hefty price before we managed to convince it to become the guardian of the Trial of Soul. If something happens to it, the operations of the Soul Division will be affected. Who? As Zhong Xian had expected, the other party really did not believe his words. Knowing that it would not make a difference no matter how much he argued, he shook his head and said, I understand. I'll help you treat it then. Seeing that Sun Sha did not hold any hostility toward the chrysoprase soul beast, Hall Master Xing heaved a sigh of relief. It's fine. Our Combat Master Hall has top-notch medicine to deal with injuries. I'll just get my men to bring some over. There's no need to waste good medicine for this. Allow me to treat it instead, Zhong Xian said. Don't worry, I am a physician too. I won't stoop so low as to harm my patient. I nearly forgot that Sun Sha is a formidable physician too. Hall Master Xing came to a realization, and he burst into a hearty laughter. The man before him was a formidable physician who could treat a poison that even Elder Qi was helpless before. With him treating the chrysoprase soul beast, it should not be long before the latter was nursed to full health. Indeed, Sun Sha's medicinal skills are nothing short of amazing. Considering that the chrysoprase soul beast has only sustained physical wounds, it shouldn't be a problem for him. Elder Qi nodded. It would be a pleasure to see Sun Sha's medicinal skill in action. But as he said those words, his smile abruptly froze as his words came to a halt. Right before his eyes, he saw the young man walking up to the chrysoprase soul beast and kicking it forcefully once more. Peng! The chrysoprase soul beast flew right into the sky once more. Elder Qi, Hall Master Xing, and Division Head Liao. Didn't you say that you are a physician and you wouldn't stoop so low as to harm a patient? Didn't you say that you are going to treat it? Is there a physician in a world who treats their patient like that? The trio nearly burst into tears. Unable to stand it any longer, Hall Master Xing dashed forward and grabbed the hand of the young man before him and asked with a deep frown, Sun Sha, just what on earth do you want? If not for the fact that the other party was a benefactor to him and the Combat Master Hall, he would have definitely sent the other party flying with a slap at this very moment. Peng! With his hand grabbed by Hall Master Xing, Zhong Xian had no choice but to stop what he was doing. He turned around and faced Hall Master Xing with a peeved look on his face and said, Hall Master Xing, I am in the midst of my treatment. Move aside. Ah! Hall Master Xing was slightly taken aback by Zhong Xian's forceful words. Before he could respond to those words, the chrysoprase soul beast suddenly rose to its feet and walked up to Zhong Xian before lowering its body subserviently. Sun Sha, bro son, grandpa son, won't you kick me a few more times? As long as you give me a few more good kicks, I'll even acknowledge you as my master. Hall Master, Division Head Liao, and Elder Qi. Hall Master Xing was afraid that the chrysoprase soul beast would leave the Combat Master Hall out of rage from a conflict with Sun Sha, and that was why he had rushed over as soon as possible to mediate between the both of them. Yet, Who would have thought that the chrysoprase soul beast would actually have an extraordinary interest in pain? As long as he kicks you, you will even go as far to acknowledge him as your master. The heck? When I recruited you over back then, you were so arrogant, as if you were the master of the world. Why are you so subservient now? Are those who specialize in soul arts as perverted as you are? Wait a moment, isn't this an opportunity as well? If I can get it to acknowledge me as its master, I won't need to worry about it leaving the combat master hall anymore, right? After pondering for a moment, Hall Master Xing walked up to the chrysoprase soul beast and cleared his throat. Ahem. Chrysoprase soul beast, why don't you acknowledge me as your master instead? I'll kick you whenever you desire it. Chrysoprase soul beast. Zhong Xian. Ignoring the sudden eccentric words from Hall Master Xing, Zhong Xian turned to the chrysoprase soul beast and said, "By now, you should know that I am not a soul oracle, right?" The chrysoprase soul beast's lips twitched slightly as it quickly replied. Of course you're not. If he were to say that the other party was a soul oracle once more, it might just be killed on the spot. Hearing those words, Hall Master Xing turned to the duo and asked, "Soul oracle? What are the both of you talking about?" Due to my abnormally powerful soul, it thought that I was a soul oracle and made a move against me, Zhong Xian explained. You suspected Sun Sure of being a soul oracle? Hall Master Xing turned to the chrysoprase soul beast and shook his head. You must be misunderstanding something here. Sun Sure over here is a particularly formidable spirit awakener, and that's why his soul may appear to be abnormally powerful. In fact, he was the one who helped treat the huge rift in my primordial spirit. He's a spirit awakener. The chrysoprase soul beast was stunned for a moment before awkwardness spread across its face. Despite their differing field of specialties, spirit awakeners had a deep understanding of souls just like soul oracles. Otherwise, there was no way they would have been able to enchant weapons, nourish souls, and reinforce primordial spirits. To think that he would actually suspect a spirit awakener of being a soul oracle and even make a move on the other party. Seeing that the other party no longer doubted him, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. At this point, he could not help but recall a particularly intriguing piece of information he had heard from the other party, so he asked, "I remember that you said earlier that you have met a soul oracle, but didn't the soul oracles go extinct many years ago? For it to have witnessed the means of a soul oracle in person, could it be that there were other soul oracles who had survived the wrath of the master teachers?" That's what I thought too. But a few decades ago, back when I was still traveling around the world, I encountered a soul oracle. He possessed exceptionally powerful means that allowed him to devour the souls of others to nourish his own. With my own eyes, I saw the soul of a good friend of mine being consumed, and I was nearly devoured myself. It is only due to my powerful soul that I was able to withstand his soul art and escape. This is also why I got particularly agitated when I saw you utilizing means reminiscent of a soul art and acted recklessly. Please do pardon me for that, the chrysoprase soul beast said. Hearing those words, Zhong Xian frowned. There was indeed a soul art that allowed one to devour the souls of others to nourish their own. However, that was an extremely depraved technique, so Zhong Xian had opted not to learn it. Where did you encounter the soul oracle? Zhong Xian asked. The chrysoprase soul beast pondered for a brief moment before replying. I encountered the soul oracle in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows. The marshlands of the Northern Meadows? Zhong Xian was startled. Could it be related to Vicious? Back then, when Kang Shu attempted to kill him back in the trial of inner demons, he had used soul search on the other party and learned that Vicious had a body part hidden in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows. For the chrysoprase soul beast to say that he had encountered a soul oracle there, it seemed too much of a coincidence for the both matters to not be related to one another. There are soul oracles in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows? Why have you never spoken of it before? Hall Master Xing's face darkened. The duty of the combat masters was not only in fending off the otherworldly demons but to protect mankind as well. If a soul oracle capable of consuming souls appeared, it was their responsibility to defeat them. I intended to do so, but it's a pity that the Combat Master Hall has no one who stands a chance against him at all. If I had spoken of it, it would just have resulted in unneeded deaths of combat masters, the chrysoprase soul beast replied. This Hall Master Xing's face reddened. Clearly, the chrysoprase soul beast lacked confidence in the combat master Hall's strength. Hall Master Xing, there's no need for you to feel embarrassed by this. The means of the soul oracles are extremely difficult to deal with. Putting aside unprepared combat masters, it would be difficult for you to deal with the soul oracle even if you headed there personally. As the chrysoprase soul beast spoke, hostility surfaced in its eyes. In fact, I only chose to accept your invitation to the soul division back then in hopes of tempering your combat master's souls and my own so as to exact vengeance for my good friend one day. Seeing its state, Hall Master Xing nodded in realization. It was no wonder the chrysoprase soul beast had never spoken about any further remuneration over these years. It seemed like its main purpose at the soul division was to avenge the friend whom it had lost to the soul oracle back then. Zhongxian pondered for a moment before asking, "Can you explain the situation to me? If the other party is truly a soul oracle, I might be of some help." His soul cultivation had already hit a bottleneck due to lack of further soul cultivation techniques. Thus, it was about time for him to search for new ones, and this could very well be an opportunity for him. Besides, considering that this matter was likely related to Vicious, there was a need for him to head over there personally. Hearing those words, the eyes of the chrysoprase soul beast lit up. "Given that the strength of Sun Sha's soul exceeds even mine, it would be great if you could help us defeat that soul oracle." Over the years, it had assessed many combat masters, but not a single one had been able to satisfy its demand. On the other hand, even though the person before it was still young, his soul was exceptionally powerful, such that even it was not a match for his soul. If the other party could help it in dealing with the soul oracle, they might be able to subdue him. My friend was a verdant cloak beast, and his cultivation had reached primordial spirit realm, just like me. We heard that the marshlands of the northern meadows had afloat soul flowers, which are rumored to be able to enhance one's soul significantly upon consumption. Thus, we headed there together. However, before we could find the afloat soul flowers, we met that soul oracle and ended up fighting him. He was unable to match the both of us, so he turned around and fled. However, in the middle of the night, he assaulted us in his soul form, and with a bellow, he extracted my friend's soul from his body and captured it. I tried every single method at my disposal, but I was unable to retrieve my friend's soul from his grasp. Eventually, I could only watch with my eyes as he devoured my friend's soul whole. After that, he tried to capture my soul as well. However, fortunately, due to my powerful innate soul, I was able to withstand his soul art and flee. Otherwise, I would have lost my life there as well. Recalling the situation back then, the chrysoprase soul beast could not help but feel a little frightened. As a master of soul arts itself, it knew how frightening soul oracles were. Soul arts might have appeared to be relatively weaker in a direct battle, but due to their elusive nature, it was nearly impossible to guard against them. If a soul oracle put their mind to it, they could easily draw out the soul of another in the middle of their dreams. With just a bellow, he was able to draw out your friend's soul? Zhongxian frowned. There was no record of such a formidable soul art from the heritage he had obtained from Mo Hunsheng. The chrysoprase soul beast nodded. Indeed. Just by calling out the name of my friend, the soul oracle was able to extract his soul. No matter how my friend retaliated or how I tried to save him, it didn't work at all. Recalling the various means he possessed as well, Zhongxian nodded in agreement. It's indeed difficult to guard against the means of a soul oracle. Just as he was about to continue speaking, Division Head Wei suddenly rushed into the room. Hall Master Xing, they are here. They are here. Hall Master Xing nodded. Sunsure, let's discuss this matter later. The big trouble that I told you about previously is here. Great. I have been wanting to meet the man who dared provoke the Combat Master Hall. Don't worry, I will have his teeth knocked out for you. Zhongxian nodded. Following behind Hall Master Xing, they swiftly left the Soul Division, and before long, they arrived before a vast square. Before they could enter the square, an excited exclaim suddenly sounded. Teacher, we have been looking all around for you. Turning around, Zhongxian saw Wang Ying and Zheng Yang rushing up to him. Behind them, the many members of the Shenxian faction were lined up neatly. Upon seeing Zhongxian, they immediately clasped their fists and greeted him. Principal Zhong, you came at a good time. It happens that I'm about to clash with an expert, so it'd be good for you to watch carefully. Zhong Xian nodded. He had been thinking of asking Hall Master Xing to allow the members of the Xianxian faction to spectate the battle as well. After all, it would be a good learning opportunity for them. However, considering how gravely Hall Master Xing regarded the matter, it did not seem right for him to turn it into a spectacle for others. But since the entire Xianxian faction was already there, he was spared from the dilemma. You are going to clash with an expert? Who is it? Wang Ying asked curiously. It's with. Wait a moment, let me ask first. It was only at this moment that Zhong Xian realized that he still did not know whom his opponent was. Thus, turning to face Hall Master Xing, he asked with a polite smile, Hall Master Xing, may I know whom the big trouble is? Who is the opponent whom I need to defeat? Chapter 1135. What? I am the big trouble? Till now, Hall Master Xing had always referred to that person as Big Trouble, and he had not said who the person was. As such, Zhong Xian had no idea who the other party was. All he knew was that the other party was an extremely skilled individual who possessed fighting prowess at the peak of his cultivation realm. As one who had cultivated the Heaven's Path divine art, he was confident that he would be able to subdue any opponent in the same cultivation realm easily, but he did not believe that he was truly invincible. After all, his clone was always around to remind him not to get complacent. Since his clone was able to attain strength far greater than him, surely there would be some amazingly talented cultivators in the world who might have been able to do the same. As such, from the start to the end, he had never doubted that the Big Trouble Hall Master Xing referred to could have been referring to him. After all, he had never met with anyone from the Combat Master Hall in his identity as the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy ever since he arrived in Qingyuan Empire, so how could he possibly be the big trouble the other party was talking about? Furthermore, from the tone Hall Master Xing assumed, it was apparent that the Combat Master Hall was facing a great adversary, which further served to convince Zhong Xian's subconscious mind that it could not possibly be him. After all, he was a humble individual who could not get any more low profile. Ever since he arrived in the Qingyuan Empire, all he did was pay a visit to the Spirit Awakener Guild, so it did not make sense for a leaving Aperture Realm expert like Hall Master Xing to be so worried about him. After asking, Zhong Xian waited patiently to hear from Hall Master Xing whom that formidable expert was, only to see the leaving Aperture Realm cultivator's mouth twitching non-stop. His body staggered weakly from side to side, and it seemed as if he would collapse to the ground at any moment. At this point, the thought of killing himself even flashed across Hall Master Xing's mind. After everything he had done to guard against the Xianxian faction, it turned out that the other party's commander had already infiltrated their camp, converting nearly all of the combat masters into his students. To think that he was so naive as to believe that he had managed to find himself an expert to defeat Principal Zhong and resolve the crisis the Combat Master Hall was currently facing. They had even gone to the extent of allowing Sun She to learn their heritage, only to find out that he was actually Zhong Xian at this point in time. Not only did he fail to resolve the crisis, he even turned it into a catastrophe. A mouthful of blood welled up at the back of Hall Master Xing's throat, ready to spew forth at any moment. Hall Master Xing turned around to look at Elder Qi, only to see that the latter had a flabbergasted look on his face as well. Back then, he had wanted to see Principal Zhong's painting, which Wu Qingfeng had sent in, and compare it with Sun She to verify if they were the same person. However, Elder Qi had happened to arrive at that moment and confirmed that Sun She was his benefactor. He had guaranteed that Sun She could not possibly be Principal Zhong. From the looks of it now, it seemed that Elder Qi had no idea what was going on either. If you don't know, don't make blind guarantees. Look at the trouble you have landed us in. If only he knew this would happen, he would not have taken Elder Qi's word for it. It just so happened that Feng Zun, Jiang Yuan, and the others were cultivating in isolation at the moment, saying that they wanted to condition themselves so as to face the Xianxian faction at full strength. Everything had happened so coincidentally that it seemed as if the heavens had planned the doom of their Combat Master Hall themselves. Clutching his chest, Hall Master Xing felt his breathing becoming more and more unstable. He felt like he was a true fool. All of those schemes he had come up with to fend against the Shenxian faction ended up as nothing more than a joke. If anything, it had only hastened the downfall of their combat master hall. Why did life have to be so difficult? Unable to stand it any longer, Hall Master Xing asked, "You are Principal Zhong? Then why did you call yourself Sun Qiong?" Not expecting the other party to ask this question instead of revealing whom to beat up, Zhong Xian was slightly taken aback. Sighing deeply, he spoke in a tone reminiscent of an expert attempting to conceal himself in the mortal world. "I don't like to cause trouble or stand out too much. After I enchanted the Spirit Awakener Guild, I didn't want to bring unneeded trouble to the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy as a result of that, so I decided to adopt another persona instead. It was truly a trouble being too outstanding. He could not even conceal his true identity when he wanted to. How frustrating. Pu." Upon hearing those words and seeing how the other party was acting, blood spewed out of Hall Master Xing's mouth, and his breathing became even more unstable. "You said that you don't like to cause trouble or stand out. Low profile? Low profile your head. Over the 3 days you have spent in our Combat Master Hall, the ruckus and commotion you have caused never halted at any single point in time. You even went to the extent of turning almost all of our combat masters into your student. If not for the fact that you were too busy cultivating and challenging the trials, perhaps our Combat Master Hall might have become yours by now. Every single time you challenged a trial, you just had to create a record that left others deep in despair, and you call that being low profile? There is no one in the world who could be more high profile than you. Hall Master Xing, what's wrong?" Seeing the leaving Aperture Realm expert before him abruptly spurting blood in the middle of a conversation, Zhong Xian worriedly checked on him as he stepped forward, wanting to help Hall Master Xing Yu. Looking at the innocent look on the other party's face, Hall Master Xing felt so angered that he could have erupted. However, he eventually forcefully suppressed it. To be honest, he could not blame Principal Zhong for this either. In the first place, he was the one who went to the Spirit Awakener Guild to engage the other party's help. Besides, the other party had no obligation to report his true identity either, especially to a stranger like him. And more importantly, the other party had agreed to help him get rid of the huge trouble out of goodwill. It was a pity that the heavens seemed to be playing a trick on them, resulting in such an awkward situation. "It's nothing, I'm just a little short on breath." Hall Master Xing waved his hand and rejected Zhong Xian's help. Still unwilling to accept the truth, he asked once more, "You really are Zhong Xian?" "That's right. I apologize for concealing this matter from you, but it was not my intention to lie to you," Zhong Xian replied. "All right then." Hall Master Xing's face turned reddened further, and his breathing grew even more erratic. Noticing that there was something amiss with Hall Master Xing's state, Zhong Xian frowned. "Hall Master Xing, is there something wrong? You were still perfectly fine a moment ago, or could it be that Big Trouble has already made a move on you?" To make a move right before his eyes without him noticing, it seemed like the Big Trouble was far stronger than he had anticipated. Cough cough. Unable to watch on the situation any longer, Division Head Liao stepped forward and said, "Principal Zhong, the Big Trouble that Hall Master Xing is referring to, is actually you." He feared that if this situation were to continue, their Hall Master might just die from sheer frustration. "What?" Zhong Xian was startled. "I am the Big Trouble?" "That's right." Seeing how the other party was completely oblivious to the matter, Division Head Liao nodded helplessly. "But when you first mentioned the trouble in the Spirit Awakener Guild, I had not even been to the Combat Master Hall, and I haven't met any of you before either." Zhong Xian was completely bewildered by the situation. "Who?" "You will have to ask them for this matter," Division Head Liao said as he pointed to Wang Ying and the others. Frowning, Zhong Xian turned to his 2 direct disciples and asked authoritatively, "What did you 2 do this time around to make the Combat Master Hall so angry?" "We." Wang Ying's face reddened as she said, "Some of the combat masters in the Combat Master Hall didn't abide by the rules and sneaked over to our accommodation to challenge us ahead of the exchange. As such, they ended up being pummeled by our Shenxian faction. After that, they insisted on joining us, so we welcomed them with open arms and taught them the battle techniques and combat skills that you have taught us. That's all. From the very start, the purpose of this exchange is to learn from one another, So, this shouldn't be any problem at all. Zhong Xian frowned. If the members of both organizations were just challenging and learning from one another, it should have been no big deal at all. Was there a need for Hall Master Xing and the others to label him as big trouble and even display such deep fear for him? Cough cough. Actually, the combat masters that joined the Shenxian faction aren't just limited to ordinary members. It seems there are 5 division heads too. They were impressed by your teachings, so they joined the Shenxian faction as well. Seeing that his teacher was still a little bewildered by the situation, Liu Yang elaborated further on the matter. Even the division heads have joined our Shenxian faction? Zhong Xian's lips twitched. He finally understood what was going on. This was no longer a problem of whether they joined the Shenxian faction or not, but that the dignity of the Combat Master Hall was at stake. No wonder the Combat Master Hall regarded him as their top enemy. Who would have thought that within just 3 short days, this group of rascals would dare to do something so preposterous? How infuriating. You all. Truly preposterous. It's out of goodwill that the Combat Master Hall agreed to have an exchange with us, so how can you poach their members? Is this the right way to treat our friends? Regardless of whether we are master teachers or not, we must abide by our morals and conduct ourselves appropriately. Even if the division heads willingly joined the Shenxian faction, it's not right to bring them into the Shenxian faction. Is this how I have taught you all this while? You are ruining the valiant reputation I have built up for myself. How am I to face our friends in the Combat Master Hall in the future? Zhong Xian began to berate Wang Ying and the others from the Shenxian faction furiously. But before he could finish his words, the many combat masters behind Hall Master Xing finally arrived at the square. Over the past few days, Zhong Xian had been too busy cultivating and challenging trials, so they had not been able to consult him on the problems that they had. Thus, upon seeing him standing in the middle of the square, they could not hold themselves back any longer. The entire group rushed forward excitedly and kneeled onto the ground. Paying respects to teacher Wang Ying, Liu Yang, everyone from the Shenxian faction. Chapter 1136. Envoys from the Spirit Awakener Guild headquarters arrive. Wang Ying, along with the others from the Shenxian faction, came to a realization. Turning their gazes to Zhong Xian once more, admiration couldn't help but seep into their eyes. As expected of their teacher, principal, they had to utilize every single means at their disposal before they were able to convince 300 combat masters to join the Shenxian Guild. On the other hand, their teacher, principal, simply marched straight into the Combat Master Hall and took every single combat master as his student. Truly, they had been too narrow-minded and timid. How could only capture a cub without entering a tiger's den? On the other end, Zhong Xian's face had turned completely green at this point. He was in the midst of lecturing his students when this drama suddenly unfolded before his eyes. The words that he had been intending to speak ended up stifling in his mouth just like that, and he found his breathing becoming more and more unstable. In this moment, he suddenly felt like he could empathize with Hall Master Xing. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Let me introduce you. This is the Shenxian faction which I have founded. This is a good opportunity for all of us to trade insights and learn from one another. Zhong Xian said with a wave of his hand. Yes. The combat masters nodded. As for you all, this is also a good opportunity for you to learn from our friends at the Combat Master Hall. It's true that you possess an advantage in terms of combat sense and fighting prowess, but in terms of battle techniques and state of mind, none of you are close to coming on par with them. You all still have much to work on, Zhong Xian instructed. He had focused his effort on lecturing the Shenxian faction on combat skills, so it was inevitable that those from the Combat Master Hall would be unable to match them. However, in terms of the foundations and sheer strength, the Shenxian faction would definitely be on the losing end. Ultimately, the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy's foundation simply paled too much in comparison to the massive Combat Master Hall. In terms of resources and heritage, there was no comparing the two. You are members of the Shenxian faction? I heard that Xiao Qin and the others have already joined your ranks. Are you still recruiting? If not for my division head keeping a close eye on all of us the past few days, we would have long gone over. I heard that you all possess exceptional strength for your cultivation realm, and I have long wanted to try your hand. Anyone interested in a duel with me? It didn't take long for the combat masters and the members of the Shenshen faction to mingle together harmoniously. The Combat Master Hall had tried to lock down the news concerning the defection of Xiao Qin, the 5 division heads, and a few hundred other combat masters, but this matter was simply too big to be concealed. They might be able to stop others from speaking about it in the open, but they couldn't prevent gossiping in the shadows. By this time, most of the combat masters had heard bits and pieces of the matter, and they couldn't help but be curious in the Shenshen faction. And at this moment, hearing that they were personally taught by the great Sun Larosha, their excitement was palpable. Very soon, the members from both organizations began crossing hands. Xiao Qin was the first representative to step forth from the Shenshen faction, and he managed to utterly defeat a longtime rival of his in the Combat Master Hall. Even those whom he was hardly a match for in the past couldn't even last 3 blows in his hands. Despite not receiving Zhong Xian's direct guidance, Wang Ying and the others still unreservedly imparted their knowledge to him. Through earnestly learning from their teachings, he had gained many new insights into combat, allowing his fighting prowess to advance by leaps and bounds. Not to mention, he was a genius in combat himself. 3 days wasn't long, but it was still sufficient for him to make substantial improvement. All in all, his fighting prowess had increased by at least 2-fold. We are willing to join the Shenshen faction as well. We humbly ask of you to teach us as well. Seeing how swiftly their companions had improved under the tutelage of the Shenshen faction, the other combat masters couldn't hold themselves back any longer. Hi! Who could have thought that the 10,000 years of legacy of the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall would be destroyed in my hands? Seeing the sight before him, Hall Master Xing knew that there was nothing he could do anymore. A look of defeat reminiscent of a failed examinee surfaced on his face, and an ache so sharp that it rendered him unable to breathe assaulted his heart. As the Hall Master, it was a failure in itself for him to be unable to bring the Combat Master Hall to greater heights under his leadership, let alone the absorption of the Combat Master Hall into an organization from a Tier 1 empire. He had prepared himself for the worst to come, but seeing it happen before his eyes was nevertheless heart-wrenching. Hall Master Xing, there's no need for you to blame yourself. This matter is not a bad thing to our Combat Master Hall. On the contrary, it could even be considered as a blessing. At this point, Feng Zun suddenly arrived on the square. He had been in seclusion ever since he heard of the arrival of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy 3 days ago, intending to prepare himself to pull off a great comeback during the exchange. Yet, when he finally came out of his seclusion, this was the shocking sight that welcomed him. It was inevitable that he would feel slightly rattled within. However, recalling the various incredible feats that Principal Zhong had pulled off previously, this matter didn't seem to be too surprising anymore. In fact, he felt a little relieved even. He wasn't aware that Zhong Xian had managed to become a celestial saint, but the various affairs that they had gone through together in the Qiuwu Palace was still fresh on his mind. Without a doubt, there was no harm to maintaining such close ties with an organization headed by a master teacher as formidable as the other party. With this layer of relationship, their Combat Master Hall would surely develop swiftly, and it was just a matter of time before they overtook the other conferred Empire Combat Master Hall. A blessing. Hall Master Xing and Division Head Liao turned their gazes over. Indeed. Think about it, the young man whom Zhuo Qingfeng had brought to the headquarters to participate in the progeny of combat selection, Zheng Yang, is Principal Zhong's direct disciple. Feng Zun nodded in agitation. If Zheng Yang were to clear the progeny of combat selection, that would effectively mean that he is the next head of our entire Combat Master Hall, a powerhouse even when taking the entire Master Teacher continent into consideration. Not to mention, he is also a member of the Shenshen faction. This. Hall Master Xing and the others were taken aback. They had been too focused on the fact that the Shenshen faction was a Tier 1 empire organization that they hadn't considered matters from this perspective yet. Taking a step back, even if he fails the progeny of combat selection, an genius who is qualified to participate in the selection is bound to become an elder of the Combat Master Hall at the very least. With him around, even if our Qingyuan Empire conferred Master Hall were to join the Shenshen faction, who would dare mock us? Feng Zun continued. Hall Master Xing and the others fell into deep thoughts. If one were to look at matters from that perspective, that was indeed the case. Even though the master-teacher continent viewed seniority with grave importance, what was more important was the heart to learn. No matter how old or senior an individual was, as long as the other party was more skilled than him in a single aspect, it would be worthwhile to learn from the other party. Not to mention, Kongsha had acknowledged many individuals weaker than him as his teacher and learned from them without a shred of conceit or arrogance too. Since even a man respected as the world's teacher could lower himself, why couldn't others do the same? A willingness to humble oneself to learn should be respected, not ridiculed. What would be truly ridiculous was for one to choose ignorance over knowledge for his own pride. If Zheng Yang were to become the progeny of combat, he would inherit the greatest heritage of the Combat Master Hall, and it would only be a matter of time before he became their next Hall Master. Surely there was no shame in joining the organization which the head of the powerful Combat Master Hall was a member of. And even if the other party didn't become the Hall Master, an elder of the powerful Combat Master Hall was still a plenty incredible figure in the Master-Teacher continent. Similarly, it would still be an honor for them to be in the Shenxian faction too. I understand. Having thought things through, Hall Master Xing sighed deeply and nodded. With this, the knot in his heart was finally untangled. Turning to Zhongxian once more, he couldn't help but feel deep respect. For a man in his 20s to have all of the combat masters choose him over the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall, which had 10,000 years of legacy behind it, he was truly a fearsome figure. His background probably isn't simple either, Hall Master Xing remarked. From what I know, Principal Zhong's teacher goes by the name of Yang Xian, and his cultivation has reached an unfathomable level far beyond our imagination. Feng Zun nodded in response. Yang Xian? Startled, Hall Master Xing widened his eyes slightly. Could it be Chem? Has Hall Master Xing heard of Yang Shi before? I recall hearing such a figure from my teacher before. There's formidable master teacher whom others address as Yang Shi in the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, and his cultivation has achieved an astounding level matched by very few in the long history of the Master Teacher continent. However, I'm not too certain as to whether this Yang Shi's name is Yang Xian or not. Hall Master Xing said. Hall Master Xing's teacher? Do you mean 8-star combat master Tong Qianqiu, the man who goes by the nickname of Inferno Adamantine? Division Head Liao asked. Even though Hall Master Xing had never spoken about his heritage, after several centuries of friendship, Division Head Liao was still able to fathom a thing or two. Inferno Adamantine Tong Qianqiu was a formidable combat master renowned even in the Empire Alliance. With his steel fists, he instilled deep fear into his opponents. Once, in a battle, he had single-handedly slain more than several dozen thousand otherworldly demons, thus striking his name out in the Master-Teacher continent. UN Hall Master Xing nodded. If even Combat Master Tong has spoken such words, that Yang Shi must be truly a formidable figure. If Yang Shi truly is Principal Zhong's teacher, that would explain the latter's incredible capabilities. Under the tutelage of such a formidable master teacher, he was bound to achieve great things in the future, Feng Zun said. He had originally intended on challenging Zhongxian once more to cleanse his name, but in this moment, such thoughts had already vanished from his mind. Since it was impossible for him to catch up with the other party no matter what he did, he might as well spare himself from the humiliation. It wasn't a bad thing to set high goals, but a human must understand his own limits. Being too fixated on something impossible would only narrow one's scope. While Hall Master Xing and the others were chatting, Zhongxian was busying himself with managing the exchange. Facilitating the exchange between the two organizations was no easy task. Under everyone's request, Zhongxian conducted a lecture at the very end of the exchange. By the end of the lecture, it was already late at night, and the members from both organizations departed from the square excited and satisfied. Deciding to stay overnight at the Combat Master Hall, Zhongxian beckoned Wang Ying and Liu Yang over and said, "Here are the fist art, palm art, movement art, defensive technique, and soul cultivation technique which I have organized over the past few days. Take a look through them and internalize them." Over the past 3 days, he hadn't just been busy cultivating. He had also compiled a couple of battle techniques and cultivation techniques which even ordinary cultivators could practice. Since Wang Ying and Liu Yang were around, he could impart it to them first. Yes. Wang Ying and Liu Yang nodded as they flipped open the book. It didn't take them long to finish browsing through the book, and with a clap of their hands, the books were completely destroyed. If these books were to be leaked out, they might draw unwanted attention onto themselves. Thus, it would suffice for them to retain a record of the technique in their minds and cultivate it silently. If you have any questions regarding the techniques, raise them now. Seeing that they were done, Zhongxian turned to them and said. Wang Ying and Liu Yang quickly barraged him with all of the doubts they had. 2 hours later, the duo finally gained a thorough understanding of the battle techniques and cultivation techniques. Heaving a sigh of relief, Zhongxian was just about to send them back to their accommodation when Sun Qiong abruptly rushed in at this moment. Young Master, Guild Leader Ruan of the Spirit Awakener Guild seeks an audience. Guild Leader Ruan? Why would she be looking for me? Zhongxian frowned. It couldn't be that the guild building acting disobediently again and had secretly sneaked off. But that couldn't be. They had already signed a soul contract, so such a thing should be impossible. Invite her in. Zhongxian waved his hand. Nodding, Sun Qiong left the room. Soon after, he returned with Guild Leader Ruan and a middle-aged lady. The middle-aged lady that had come with Guild Leader Ruan looked to be in her late 30s. The clothes she wore was ordinary, but there was an air of grace and nobility around her that made none dare to underestimate her. Her disposition granted her an incredible presence that left one feeling tensed and deeply pressed. What incredible strength! Her cultivation seems to have even exceeded that of Hall Master Xing's. Zhongxian narrowed his eyes in alarm. Even without the eye of insight, he could still easily discern the extraordinary strength wielded by the middle-aged lady before him. Despite having made a breakthrough to leaving Aperture Realm, Hall Master Xing was nowhere close to matching up to her. In other words, even at the very least, she was a leaving Aperture Realm expert. When had such a formidable figure appear in the Spirit Awakener Guild? Pleased to meet you once more, Sun Shi, or perhaps I should say, Principal Zhong. While Zhongxian was still assessing the middle-aged lady with a doubtful look, Guild Leader Ruan walked up to him and greeted. To be honest, she still found it hard to accept that the talented Spirit Awakener whom she had met a few days ago would turn out to be the principal of a Tier 1 Empire Master Teacher Academy. Guild Leader Ruan, there's no need to stand on ceremony. May I ask for the reason for your visit at this late hour? Zhongxian asked. To be honest with you, I have reported the matter regarding the guild building to the headquarters, and the headquarters regards the matter with grave importance. Let me introduce you, this is Elder Wei from our headquarters, Guild Leader Ruan said. Headquarters? You mean the Spirit Awakener Guild headquarters? Chapter 1137, Zhongxian's True Aptitude. Noticing Zhongxian's confused look, Guild Leader Ruan explained, Elder Wei happens to be in the vicinity of Qingyuan City, so she was dispatched here. Just like most other guilds, the headquarters of the Spirit Awakener Guild were located far away from the Qingyuan Empire. Even Saint 5 Dan aerial beasts would have to fly for many days before they reached Qingyuan City. It was only due to Elder Wei being in the vicinity that she was able to make it there within 3 days. After explaining the situation to Zhongxian, Guild Leader Ruan turned to Elder Wei and said, Elder Wei, this is the genius whom I told you about earlier, Principal Zhong. The talent he possesses in spirit enchantment is unlike any I have ever seen or heard of. Elder Wei nodded. Turning to Zhongxian, she said, Guild Leader Ruan has already told me about you. Within just a few hours, from knowing nothing at all about spirit enchantment, you successfully enchanted the guild building just by browsing through books. Your aptitude for spirit enchantment is truly frightening. You're too polite. Zhongxian quickly waved his hand before asking with a perplexed frown, may I know the reason behind Elder Wei's visit? Principal Zhong is indeed a candid person. I am not the type that likes to beat around the bush either, so I'll get straight to the point. Our Spirit Awakener Guild headquarters regard you extremely highly, and we wish to extend our invitation to you to train at our headquarters, Elder Wei said. For a person of her cultivation realm, there was no need for her to dawdle with pleasantries. Train at your headquarters? Zhongxian was slightly startled for a moment before shaking his head. I believe that guild leader Wan must have told you that I am a master teacher as well. For me, Spirit Awakener is more of a side occupation, so I don't think I will be devoting too much to furthering my skills in it. If he did not manage to become a 9-star master teacher before he reached 30, his life would be forfeited. Spirit Awakener was a wonderful occupation, but he could not afford to allow his attention to wander at this moment. Furthermore, while it was true that he could advance his cultivation swiftly by tapping into the resources in the Spirit Awakener Guild, there was a catch to it. If he received benefits from the Spirit Awakener Guild, he would have a responsibility to it as well. Give and take, this was how the world worked. The Spirit Awakener Guild would never allow him to shirk off his responsibilities to it after investing resources in him. It was for this reason that Zhongxian had chosen to slowly advance with his own strength. He didn't want to owe too big of a favor to anyone and end up slowing his advancement as a master teacher and a cultivator. You can resign from being a master teacher. Elder Wei looked at Zhongxian intently. Her face was impassive, but the sharp glint in her eyes revealed the deep confidence that she had. With the heritage and resources available at our headquarters, as long as someone of your aptitude works diligently, I am confident that you will one day gain control of the Spirit Awakener Mountain and become the Spirit Awakener Sovereign. At such a level, even 9-star master teachers will have to treat you with the utmost respect. Isn't that much better than slowly fumbling your way up as a master teacher? As Spirit Awakening was a support-based occupation, it was inevitable that its fighting prowess was beneath that of the other guilds. However, if one could reach the very top, the potential it wielded was immense. If the young man before her could gain control over their sacred lands and become the Spirit Awakener Sovereign, what was there to be feared of 9-star master teachers? I won't resign as a master teacher, Zhongxian replied resolutely. That is the primary pursuit of my life. I am interested in learning spirit enchantment as well, but ultimately, it's only a supporting occupation to me. He might have only chosen to become a master teacher out of convenience at the start, but at this point, it had become a lot more than that. Even without his innate fetal poison, he would not have been willing to abandon his identity as a master teacher to become a Spirit Awakener. Elder Wei frowned. There's no need to answer me so quickly, I'll give you a few days to think your decision through. This is a rare opportunity for you to soar to the top. Such a chance won't come again. If it had been anyone else in the young man's stead, he would have surely leaped at her offer. After all, the Spirit Awakener Guild was still one of the more influential powers in the Master Teacher continent. It might not be up to par with behemoths like the Master Teacher Pavilion and the Combat Master Hall, but ordinary guilds couldn't hope to compare to it. Yet, to flatly reject the offer like that. I am thankful for your offer, but my mind is set. There's no need for me to contemplate any further, Zhongxian replied with a polite smile. He could take Spirit Awakener as his supporting occupation, but there was no way he was going to abandon his main occupation for it. However, it would be disrespectful to the Spirit Awakener Guild, and there was no way Elder Wei was going to accept that for an answer. After all, that would effectively mean that they were devoting their resources to groom a master teacher for the Master Teacher Pavilion. Even though master teachers are the #1 occupation of the continent, the resources to go around are severely limited, and rivalry over them is strife. Reaching 9-star is no easy feat at all. However, as long as you come to the Spirit Awakener Guild, all kinds of valuable resources will be at your disposal. Furthermore, our Spirit Awakener Guild is filled with all kinds of beauties. If you wish for it, you will be able to pick any of them. In fact, if you desire so, you can even enchant any building or weapon that takes your fancy and regard them as your closest mate. Why do you have to make things difficult for yourself? Elder Wei asked with a frown. Zhongxian shook his head. I have no interest in such shallow pursuits. Back then, the Glacier Plain Court also offered me similar terms, but I rejected them nonetheless. It seemed like the Glacier Plain Court and the Spirit Awakener Guild really had a low opinion of men. It was if they thought that men were all lecherous individuals who were only interested in their lower body. What a joke! Hu Yarou, Zhao Feiwu, and the others were top-notch beauties, and it was not as if he was oblivious to the feelings they had for him. If he truly wanted it, He could have easily kept them by his side. Glacier Plain Court? Elder Wei was taken aback. There were many beauties in the Spirit Awakener Guild, but they were still far from matching the Glacier Plain Court. Most female cultivators in the Glacier Plain Court practiced yin attribute cultivation techniques, which further accentuated their feminine charms. It was for this reason that most powers in the master-teacher continent viewed marrying a disciple of the Glacier Plain Court as a huge honor. Upon learning that the Glacier Plain Court had attempted to recruit the young man before her only to fail, Elder Wei hesitated for a moment before flicking her wrist. A grayish stone appeared on her palm. This spirit gauging stone over here is able to assess one's aptitude as a spirit awakener. If your aptitude has reached the 10th level, I can help you apply for more favorable terms with the headquarters. Perhaps, it might even be possible for you to not resign as a master teacher. Assess one's aptitude as a spirit awakener? Zhong Xian asked. Elder Wei hesitated for a moment before switching to Zhenqi telepathy. That's right. To be honest with you, only one whose aptitude in spirit enchantment has reached the 10th level will stand a chance in successfully enchanting the Spirit Awakener Mountain. However, it's a pity that it has been 5,000 years since such an individual has emerged in our guild. This was a secret of their guild. Considering that it was her first time meeting with the other party, she should not have revealed such deep secrets. However, according to guild leader Wan, the young man was likely to possess an aptitude of the 10th level. If that truly was the case, she would have to bring him back to the headquarters regardless of the cost. Otherwise, the Spirit Awakener Guild would only continue down its declining spiral and eventually end up being absorbed into the other powers. Even though the Spirit Awakener Guild had many allies to rely upon, they still needed to possess some strength of their own. Otherwise, if they were to grow too reliant on others, the others could use it as leverage against them and gradually control them. Spirit Awakener Mountain. The Spirit Awakener Mountain is an artifact formed naturally by the forces of nature, and it is the greatest trump card of our guild. It's rumored that the mountain is actually a rock mined from a world above ours. Once successfully enchanted, the Spirit Awakener will attain strength on par with 9-star master teachers. With that, there will be nothing in the world that could stop them, Elder Wei said with a hint of pride in her voice. It's so formidable. Zhong Xian was astonished. To attain strength on par with 9-star master teachers just by successfully enchanting it, that was as good as soaring to the heavens in a single step. On top of that, he would even be able to keep master teacher as his main occupation. It would be a lie if he said that he was not moved by this deal. Not to mention, with the vast resources of the Spirit Awakener Guild, he would no longer have to worry about a lack of concentrated high-tier spirit stones and pinnacle spirit stones. Everything would be within his reach. Furthermore, he would be able to access their cultivation technique manuals and compile Heaven's Path Divine Art all the way to Saint Nine Dan. Even if he took his time and advanced only a single realm a day, he would still be able to reach the very top of the master-teacher continent within just a single week, becoming an existence on par with Kongsha. All right. Seeing that Zhong Xian was hooked, Elder Wei nodded as she passed the spirit gauging stone over. The test is very simple. Just grasp the stone lightly and silence your mind, and it'll automatically assess your aptitude. Zhong Xian replied with a nod as he took the stone. Placing his hands around it tightly, he closed his eyes. To be honest, he was also interested to find out what his aptitude in spirit enchantment was. As long as he could reach the mark and the other party did not insist on him resigning as a master teacher, he would seriously consider heading to the Spirit Awakener Guild headquarters. Wang. In an instant, he entered the state of heart of tranquil water. A brilliant light burst from the stone clasped in his hands. All right, it's done. A moment later, the light dissipated, and Zhong Xian opened his palm. Elder Wei and guild leader Wan quickly rushed forward to take a look at the stone, and at a single glance, their eyebrows shot up in astonishment. They couldn't help but rub their eyes in disbelief. What's wrong? Seeing the duo reacting in such an exaggerated manner, the bewildered Zhong Xian lowered his gaze to look at the stone as well, and his mouth fell open. How is this possible? On the stone, there was a single number, 3. 3. Does this number mean that my aptitude has only reached the 3rd level? Zhong Xian asked hurriedly. A moment ago, Elder Wei had said that the highest level of aptitude was 10, and given that he possessed capabilities on par with 7-star pinnacle spirit awakeners, even if he wasn't at the 10th level, he should at least be at 7th or 8th. 4-3 to appear. What the heck? That's right. It means that your aptitude has only reached the 3rd level, Elder Wei said with twitching lips. After hearing the report, she had personally dropped by the Qingyuan Empire Spirit Awakener Guild to take a look at the guild building. Based on her deductions, the other party's aptitude should, at the very minimum, be at the 9th level. Yet, 3rd level? Wasn't that a little too low? What does this represent? Does it mean that I'm very weak? Zhong Xian asked. This. With a conflicted expression, Elder Wei had no idea how she should speak of this matter to the other party. She paused for a brief moment before pointing to the spirit gauging stone in her hand. This stone possesses spirit of the 4th level. Zhong Xian. Why don't I give it another try then? Fearing that something might have gone wrong, Zhong Xian tried it a few more times. However, the result still remained fixed at 3. Seeing the number that kept appearing relentlessly on the spirit gauging stone, Zhong Xian rubbed his glabella in frustration. He had thought that his talent in spirit enchantment would at least be decent, if not perfect, but to think that he was even worse than a stone. How frustrating. It seemed that the reason he was able to become a spirit awakener so easily, even successfully enchanting the entire guild building, wasn't due to his astounding aptitude in spirit enchantment. Rather, it only meant to say that the Heaven's Path spirit enchantment art was simply too formidable. Elder Wei shook her head bitterly as she stood up. I have imposed myself on Principal Zhong today. I'll be taking my leave now. It might still have been a mistake the first time, but with the same result appearing so many times, she could no longer deceive herself. Not only did Principal Zhong not possess exceptional talent in spirit enchantment, his aptitude was atrociously horrendous. It was most likely due to sheer luck that he had been able to successfully enchant the guild building. She had thought that the Spirit Awakener Guild had finally found its savior, but from the looks of it, how could it be that simple? If a genius with an aptitude of the 10th level could appear that easily, the seat of the guild leader of the Spirit Awakener Guild wouldn't have been empty for the past 5,000 years, leaving them with no choice but to be subordinated to the other powers. There's no need to stand on ceremony, Zhong Xian replied awkwardly. He had been bargaining with the other party a moment ago, but in the end, he was worse than a mere stone. Just recalling what had happened left his face reddening in shame. I will have to ask of Principal Zhong to keep the matters concerning our guild a secret. Sending a telepathic message over, Elder Wei beckoned to guild leader Wan and said, "Let's go." Right when the both of them were about to leave the manor, a crisp voice sounded. "Teacher, can I give the spirit gauging stone a try, too?" Chapter 1138, Departure. The person who had just spoken was Wang Ying. When Elder Wei and the others entered the room earlier, she and Liu Yang had still been in the midst of cultivating. Since it didn't seem like anything confidential, they didn't excuse themselves. However, when Elder Wei took out the stone, she had felt a tingling sensation in her heart. It was a feeling reminiscent of intimacy. Thus, she could not stop herself from asking for a go. Zhong Xian turned to his student and asked, "You wish to give it a try?" At this moment, Wang Ying's face was completely red, and her body was trembling slightly. "Yes. Somehow, I feel a kind of attraction force between me and the stone." Wang Ying nodded. Attraction force? Noting the serious look on Wang Ying's face, Zhong Xian turned to Elder Wei and said, "Elder Wei, I might need to trouble you for this." "It's fine." Elder Wei nodded. With a flick of her finger, the spirit gauging stone flew toward the young lady, landing accurately in the latter's hand. Without saying anything, Wang Ying placed the stone between her palms before slowly closing her eyes. Wang! A blinding light burst from the stone. It took a while before it dissipated, and a string of numbers slowly floated into appearance. This. Upon seeing the number on the stone, Elder Wei's body jolted. Even Zhong Xian was dumbfounded. How can this be? 2 digits sat quietly on top of the spirit gauging stone. 11. Didn't you say that the 10th level is the highest level? Why does the result reflect 11? Zhong Xian asked. I have no idea. Elder Wei was bewildered. Based on what she knew, the 10th level was the highest level achievable. Only one who had reached this peak was qualified to enchant the Spirit Awakener Mountain and become the next Spirit Awakener sovereign. 411 to appear. What did this mean? Suddenly, a thought came to Elder Wei's mind, and she spoke with a quivering voice. See, could it be? This is the level of aptitude of the founder. The level of aptitude of the founder? Zhongxian asked in incomprehension. According to the legends, the founder of our Spirit Awakener Guild, known to the world as the Fairy of Spirit Enchantment, possessed an aptitude above 10 in spirit enchantment, reaching a level beyond our imaginations. It's for this reason that she was able to turn an entire mountain into a powerful artifact and enchant it. Back in that era, even Kongsha was fearful of her. It should have been impossible for an individual as talented as our founder to appear once more, but to think that I would meet such an individual in my lifetime. Elder Wei's breathing hastened as her face flushed crimson. She had originally hoped to find a genius of the 10th level to restore glory to the guild, but to think that she would actually find a genius of the 11th level instead. She could hardly imagine what this represented. As long as they groomed her well, she could potentially become a figure as powerful as their founder. Young lady, do you wish to follow me back to the Spirit Awakener Guild? Elder Wei asked anxiously. She had definitely found a treasure this time around. If she could get the other party to return with her, the Spirit Awakener Guild would reach greater heights in the near future, perhaps even ushering another era of greatness for them. Wang Ying had not expected for her aptitude in spirit enchantment to be so great, either. Panicked, she could not help but turn to the young man. Teacher, I'll listen to your will. No matter how good her aptitude in spirit enchantment was, the will of her teacher was much more important. Principal Zhong. Elder Wei glanced at Zhongxian anxiously. This. Slightly hesitant, Zhongxian turned to Wang Ying and said, execute a punching routine for me. Yes. Nodding, Wang Ying swiftly executed an elegant but powerful set of punches. Hoo-la. Her punch tore through the air like a sharp spear, creating a sharp gust of wind. This was a fist art that she had just learned from Zhongxian, but she had already achieved considerable mastery in it. A book appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. Zhongxian placed his finger on it, and the information concerning Wang Ying flowed into his mind. Swiftly looking through it, a frown emerged on his forehead. There was nothing concerning Wang Ying's talent as a spirit awakener inside at all. To be more exact, there was not anything that hinted at it either. Is the Library of Heaven's Path no longer accurate? Zhongxian was perplexed. The Library of Heaven's Path had reflected information on Zhao Wei's pure yin body the first time he met her, and the same went for Yuan Dao and Wei Ruyan as well. So, why was Wang Ying's aptitude in spirit enchantment not reflected in her Library of Heaven's Path book? Does the Library of Heaven's Path not reflect acquired constitutions? Back then, Lu Chong's combat soul constitution wasn't reflected in it either, Zhongxian wondered. Back then, the Library of Heaven's Path did not reflect the reason behind Lu Chong's massive soul. It was only through Mo Hunsheng that he learned of the combat soul constitution and that Lu Chong was suited to learn soul arts. Most likely, the situation was the same with Wang Ying as well. It might not have been an ability she was born with, and perhaps due to certain conditions of the Library of Heaven's Path, it wasn't reflected in it. Wang Ying has a conscientious personality, and she is far more meticulous than any of my other students in deciphering the simplified Heaven's Path divine art that I impart to them. Perhaps it might be the work of her personality and the prowess of the Heaven's Path divine art at work that resulted in a change in her constitution, granting her such talents, Zhongxian deduced. Fate is not something that is fixed. Not even the massive hands of the heavens are capable of grasping everything. In truth, whether it was Lu Chong or Wang Ying, their talent could only be considered average among countless others in the master-teacher continent. However, despite the deficiencies that fate had given them, they had still ended up meeting Zhongxian and cultivated the powerful Heaven's Path divine art, thus changing their lives for good. For better or for worse, destiny was a capricious power. Perhaps, even the seemingly omnipotent Library of Heaven's Path was not infallible before the capricious nature of the world. In teaching a student, It's important to assess their talents individually and cultivate their strengths. However, it is also important to assess their growth and make alterations accordingly. There are some who might not show aptitude in a certain craft initially, but a sudden bout of enlightenment could bring about massive growth in their capabilities in the field. When such a situation happens, it wouldn't do to continue viewing them as a weaker student and teaching them as such. A sudden enlightenment sprouted within Zhong Xian's mind. He felt as if he was on the verge of coming onto something important, but when he tried to grasp it, it seemed to elude him. He tried to delve deeper, to grab hold of it, but at that moment, Elder Wei's voice jolted him back to reality. Principal Zhong. Raising his gaze, Zhong Xian saw the middle-aged lady looking at him anxiously. She really wanted to take Wang Ying away, but she could keenly sense the deep relationship between the teacher and student. If the latter was unwilling to go with her, it could create some feelings of aversion between Wang Ying and the Spirit Awakener Guild. Yuan shaking his head, Zhong Xian knew that this wasn't the time for him to be thinking about other matters. Turning back to Wang Ying, he asked, "Are you willing to head to the Spirit Awakener Guild?" In such situations, what was important was not his opinion but his students'. His role was only to help guide the latter along the road of life. Wang Ying frowned in a dilemma. At the Spirit Awakener Guild, you will be entitled to a great pool of cultivation resources and a complete heritage. Naturally, you will also advance much quicker through the ranks. However, even if you choose to follow behind me, I am confident that I'll be able to bring you to the same height eventually. Zhong Xian looked at Wang Ying calmly with deep confidence in his eyes. Heading to the Spirit Awakener Guild was a good opportunity, but even if Wang Ying did not wish to take the opportunity, Zhong Xian was still confident that he could groom her into becoming one of the strongest experts on the master-teacher continent. The ultimate decision lay in the hands of the young lady before him. A deeply conflicted look surfaced on Wang Ying's little face. A moment later, she spoke up meekly. "Teacher, just like Zhao Ya, Yuan Dao, and the others, I wish to share your troubles as well. I don't want to continue being a burden to you." If she opted to follow her teacher, she would surely reach incredible heights in the future. In fact, she did not think that the heritage of the Spirit Awakener Guild could compare with her teacher's lectures. But, as her cultivation grew, the resources she required to advance through each realm would increase exponentially. Even though her teacher had never uttered a word of complaint about the matter, she could not bring herself to keep dragging her teacher back. She wanted to become a person worthy of standing beside her teacher to assist him, and not baggage that was dragging him down all the time. If she headed to the Spirit Awakener Guild and became the Spirit Awakener Sovereign, she could gain power swiftly. With her newfound strength, she would be able to help her teacher in his time of need. She had not heard it from Zhao Ya herself, but she felt that it was with the same conviction that the latter had made the decision to join the Glacier Plain Court. And the same went for Zheng Yang as well. As the first student his teacher accepted, she could not bring herself to continue selfishly leeching off him. On the other hand, upon hearing Wang Ying's words, Zhong Xian shook his head and sighed. "You are my student, how can you possibly be a burden to me?" They had only been together for a short year, but the experiences that they had gone through together were unforgettable. The bond between them was one that would never be severed. Wang Ying might have thought that she was a burden, but to him, she was family. How could a family member possibly be a burden? Hearing Zhong Xian's words, Wang Ying's eyes reddened. She was silent for a moment before resolution filled her eyes, and she declared, "I want to head to the Spirit Awakener Guild. Teacher, I know that you view me as your family, but it's the same for me as well. This is an opportunity for me to grow and soar into the greater sky. In the past, you have sheltered me from the storm, and now, it should be my turn to protect you. That's because we are a family." Zhong Xian lowered his head and nodded silently. A long moment later, he said, "Since you have made your decision, go on then. All parties must eventually come to an end." Even though he knew that it was just a matter of time before his students would leave his side, separation was still difficult for him each time. Of his 7 direct disciples, Zhao Ya had gone to the Glacier Plain Court, Lu Chong had headed to the ancient domain of Soul Oracles, Yuan Dao had returned to his clan, Wei Ruyan had left for the Poison Hall, and Zheng Yang had departed for the Combat Master Hall headquarters. 5 had already left his side. And now, the 6th was leaving him, too. Of course, Zhongxian was glad to see that they were grasping the opportunities before them. With these opportunities, he had no doubt that they would reach incredible heights. Just that, the rational mind and the sentimental heart were two separate organs in the body. He knew that it was better for them, but such rationality did little to alleviate the sorrow of separation. Teacher, you must take care of yourself. Kneeling on the ground, Wang Ying spoke hoarsely before making 8 resounding kowtows. Yuan Zhongxian nodded before placing a finger lightly on her forehead. A surge of heaven's path zhenqi flowed into her body. Placing his hands behind his back, Zhongxian said, if you meet with any danger in the future, just activate this surge of zhenqi, and I'll know, no matter how far away I am. If anyone dares bully you, even if the other party is the strongest sect on the continent or even the master-teacher pavilion itself, I'll definitely redress your grievance. His tone was impassive, but the conviction in his voice was clear for all to hear. Yuan Wangying nodded as she flashed a smile at Zhongxian. Zhongxian turned to Elder Wei and said, Elder Wei, I'll leave my student to you. I hope that you will treat her properly. If I ever learn that she has suffered the slightest grievance in the Spirit Awakener Guild headquarters, know that I'll visit there personally and demand an explanation. To be threatened by a mere Saint Tu Dan cultivator, it was natural that Elder Wei was unhappy. However, knowing that the other party was standing up for his own student, her heart still softened a little. Don't worry. Our Spirit Awakener Guild will surely protect her with everything that we have. We won't allow her to suffer the slightest grievance, so you need not worry. For 5,000 years, there had not been a single Spirit Awakener whose aptitude had reached the 10th level. It was not easy for one who possessed an aptitude of the 11th level to appear, so how could they allow anything to happen to her? After all, the future of the Spirit Awakener Guild was at stake over here. That would be for the best. Zhongxian could tell that there was not any falsehood in the other party's words, and he nodded in satisfaction. Then, he turned around and waved his hand. Since this matter is decided, it would be best for you to leave now. Unlike Zhao Yue's decisiveness, Wang Ying had a soft heart. The longer they delay the matter, the more likely that Wang Ying would hesitate and change her mind. Teacher. How could Wang Ying not understand her teacher's intention? Her body trembled, and tears trickled down her cheeks. Elder Wei walked up to Wang Ying and said, let's go. Yuan Wang Ying wiped her tears and nodded. Elder Wei then turned to Guild Leader Wan and instructed, it would be best for us to return to the headquarters as soon as possible, so we won't be staying tonight. After finding such a genius, it would be safer to escort her back to the headquarters as soon as possible to prevent any mishaps from occurring. Or else, if something really happened on the way, it would be too late for tears. After which, she turned to look at Zhongxian one last time and said, Principal Zhong, we'll be taking our leave now. Who? Right after saying those words, Elder Wei drove her zhenqi and leaped into the sky together with Wang Ying. In the blink of an eye, the both of them had already disappeared over the horizon. The very first student he had accepted ever since transcending over to this world, Wang Ying, had left. A long time later, Zhongxian let out a deep sigh. Chapter 1139, The Fourth Acknowledgement of Celestial Master Teacher Principal Zhong, Farewell. Guild Leader Ron also took her leave. With this, aside from Zhongxian, only Sun Qiong and Liu Yang remained in the courtyard. By the time Zhongxian turned around once more, Wang Ying and Elder Wei were already nowhere to be seen. With his hands behind his back, he looked into the deep night sky for a long time before saying, All right, let's return back in. What that must go would eventually go. To become true dragons, they couldn't always remain by his side. How could they mature if they were always sheltered by him? Teacher. Knowing that Zhongxian must be grieved over Wang Ying's departure, Liu Yang stepped forward, wanting to say something. However, he suddenly felt someone grabbing his arm, holding him back. Let young master be alone for a while. Sun Qiong said silently. Liu Yang turned to look at Sun Qiong and saw the latter shaking his head. He hesitated for a brief moment before nodding and following the latter away. Indeed. What his teacher needed at the moment were not words of comfort but tranquility. To see one's students leaving one side one after another was indeed not easy to bear. After leaving the courtyard, Liu Yang looked at the dark night, and for some reason, the sky looked exceptionally gloomy tonight. He turned to Sun Qiong and asked, "What can I do for teacher?" "What you can do for him is to cultivate diligently. Don't let young master's efforts go to waste." Sun Qiong pondered for a brief moment before replying. Liu Yang contemplated those words for a moment before clenching his fists tightly together. "You're right. Zhao Ya, Lu Chong, Yuan Dao, Wei Ruyan, Zheng Yang, and Wang Ying, they have all left. I am the only one remaining now. I must work hard and grow stronger so as to not let teacher down." Back in those days when all of them cultivated together, while he wasn't the one who improved the fastest, he wasn't the slowest either. Training wasn't easy, but he was satisfied. However, that feeling of satisfaction had long vanished, replaced by immense anxiety and stress. Zhao Ya, Yuan Dao, Wei Ruyan, and Lu Chong had left to inherit heritage that were suited for their unique constitution. Once they fully awakened their unique constitutions, their cultivation would surely soar through the ranks. On the other hand, Zheng Yang and Wang Ying had left for the Combat Master Hall and Spirit Awakener Guild respectively, where they would inherit complete heritage and receive top-notch cultivation resources. Without a doubt, they would grow stronger swiftly as well. Of them all, he was the only one who had remained stationary on the spot. If he were to lag behind the others, wouldn't it mean that teacher was not on par with those other powers? "No, this won't do. I have to work harder than ever." With a complicated look in his eyes, Liu Yang turned around and returned back to his room. He couldn't waste the slightest bit of time. He must work harder than ever on his cultivation so as to catch up with the others. As fellow students, he didn't wish to be lagging far behind the others when they met once more. If so, he would truly become a baggage to his teacher. "Hi." Noting Liu Yang's response, Sun Qiong shook his head. "Forget it, I shall not compete with those cultivation maniacs. Let me take a walk through the streets and see if there is any delectable food around here." Stretching his back lazily, Sun Qiong began making his way out. Ever since he arrived at Qingyuan City, he had been accompanying the lot from the Shenzhen faction, and he hadn't really gone anywhere yet. Since he had time now, it would be good for him to experience the nightlife in Qingyuan City for himself. He didn't have much interest in cultivation. Otherwise, given that the young master had personally tutored him and provided with him with generous cultivation resources, he should have long surpassed Half-Saint by now. Standing quietly on the spot, Zhongxian felt an unprecedented feeling of loneliness. His students had all nearly left him, and Luo Ruoxin was no longer around either. He couldn't help but feel that it wouldn't be long before he was all alone once more. It was as if he was slowly regressing back into those days of solitude when he first transcended over to this world. Back then, he was under the constant threat of expulsion, and there was not a student under his name. Everything was completely foreign to him, but there was not the slightest support or solace he could find from those around him. "They might learn better and stronger cultivation techniques staying by my side, but it's for the best that they have left. Staying by my side will only limit their growth as a person." A growth in cultivation was only a small aspect of life. In order to mature into adults, his students would have to venture into the larger world themselves and experience all kinds of things themselves. As this thought surfaced in his mind, Zhongxian suddenly felt like he had grasped hold of that elusive thing he had been clawing at earlier. A teacher who truly loves his students would think ahead for them. Grooming a student isn't like forging a weapon, where a forging technique and a blueprint would be sufficient to craft a good weapon. The students have their own life to live. They should experience the many aspects of life themselves, be it joy, anger, sorrow, or bitterness, and they should find their own goal and struggle for it too. If I were to just keep them by my side, all I can offer them is knowledge. They might be able to grow powerful this way as well, but I would be depriving them of an opportunity to temper themselves, and they would never be able to become true experts this way. The fact that they are leaving my side shows that they have already matured. Hong Long. His mind jolted, and a sound reminiscent of the rumbling of thunder echoed in his head. In the next moment, a unique aura abruptly descended from the sky and shrouded his figure. The fourth acknowledgement of Celestial Master Teacher, TZZZZZZZ. That unique energy dived into his body, raising his soul depth swiftly. At the same time, he fell into a trance, and his aura gradually grew deeper and steadier. The Conference Hall of the Combat Master Hall. Hall Master Xing, here is the compilation of the combat knowledge we have learned from the Shenxian faction over the past few days. According to them, they were all imparted from Principal Zhong. The head of the footwork division, Lu Wangqiu, took out a few thick books. He had only left to the Shenxian faction to study. It didn't mean that he was never coming back to the Combat Master Hall. Hall Master Xing casually flipped open the first book and began browsing through it. Before long, his eyes lit up in excitement. When he finally browsed through the books and mused over their content, he couldn't help but exclaim, Principal Zhong is indeed a genius. His understanding of combat has reached an unfathomable level. As simple as these theories may seem, they are directed towards the very crux of cultivation. Through this knowledge, our combat masters will be able to easily find the flaws of any battle technique and overcome them easily. He had never known that combat could be interpreted in such a straightforward and refreshing manner. As expected of Yang Shi's direct disciple, Principal Zhong was truly an incredible figure. Indeed. I was paying close heed when he conducted the lecture earlier during the exchange, and even though the knowledge he had imparted was simple, it was extremely enlightening. I felt that many new windows have opened up for my cultivation just by listening to his lecture. The head of the Palm Division, Yang Qinghai, added. The other division heads also nodded in agreement. If they were still a little opposed to joining the Shenxian faction before, after the exchange they had, such a feeling had vanished entirely. If anything, they would be delighted to join the Shenxian faction at this point. As long as they were to study diligently, they could foresee the overall prowess of the Combat Master Hall increasing by leaps and bounds. It seems like it's the correct decision for us to participate in the exchange. Hall Master Xing nodded in agreement. However, halfway through his words, he suddenly sensed something, and his eyes narrowed in astonishment. Voila! The other division heads seemed to have sensed the same thing that he did as well, and they hurriedly got to their feet. Let's head over to take a look. Without any hesitation, Hall Master Xing dashed out. Not too long later, he arrived at a massive hall located a short distance away from the conference hall. Placed within the hall were the tablets of the outstanding predecessors of the Combat Master Hall, as well as a sculpture of their founder. Upon stepping into the hall, they saw the tablets and the sculpture of their founder trembling non-stop, as if they had witnessed something terrifying. What's going on? The head of the footwork division, Lu Wangqiu, asked in apprehension. This was the first time he had seen such an occurrence in the 800 years of his life. Furthermore, there was no record of something of this sort happening in the long history of their Combat Master Hall. Voila! Just as Hall Master Xing and the other division heads were completely bewildered by the happenings before them, the tablets suddenly fell towards a certain direction. For some reason, their movement seemed to carry a hint of deference and respect. At the same time, the sculpture of the founder also fell to the ground. It was as if it had finally encountered an existence worthy of its respect. This. Could it be? Upon seeing these happenings, a thought suddenly came to Hall Master Xing's mind, and his eyes narrowed in shock. What is it? The division heads quickly turned their gazes to him. As combat masters devoted their time to furthering their combat skills, they weren't as knowledgeable as the master teachers. It was inevitable that they would be ignorant about the various legends and formalities of the master teacher pavilion either. Trembling of myriad tokens, the bow of submission of the predecessors. It is the sign of the birth of a celestial master teacher, Hall Master Xing said hoarsely, his voice quivering in disbelief. Celestial master teacher? Those words left the faces of the other division heads paling as well. Lu Ran was a master teacher apprentice of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. He was in charge of cleaning and organizing the teacher acknowledgement hall. It should have been his rest day today, but the other apprentice on duty had something urgent on, so he could only fill up for him. I have already made an appointment with Luo Yang to meet her parents. Damn it, she'll surely hold a grudge against me for this. Lu Ran muttered in distress. If not for this darned duty, he would have been able to make it for their appointment tonight, and if things go well, he might be able to finally bring the beauty he had been courting back home and officially terminate his long term of singlehood. But due to this darned duty, all of his plans had gone down the drain. The more he thought about this matter, the more frustrated he felt. It's only a bunch of lifeless tokens, is there a need to guard them day in day out? Pushing open the door to the teacher acknowledgement hall, Lu Ran looked at the same barren sight before him and shook his head in frustration. All that was in the teacher acknowledgement hall was a bunch of old tokens and a sculpture of Kong Shi. He understood the need to respect one's ancestors, but those were all lifeless objects. It should suffice to clean them once in a while. Surely there should be no need to appoint a guard to specially look over them. Forget it, I just have to endure this for another half a year. Once I am promoted to an official master teacher, I won't have to do such dreary chores anymore. As an ordinary apprentice, it was inevitable that he would be appointed to carry out some menial labor for the master teacher pavilion. However, once he became a true master teacher, his standing would become completely different from before. It was true that a one-star master teacher wasn't anything much in Qingyuan Empire, but a master teacher was still a master teacher. With this identity shielding him, he wouldn't have to live so humbly anymore, being at the beck and call of others. Forget it, I should just have a good sleep here and apologize to Luo Yang tomorrow morning. Stretching his back lazily, Lu Ran headed to a corner of the teacher acknowledge hall and placed a few cushions together before lying down on it. Closing his eyes, he was on the verge of sleeping when he suddenly felt the entire hall tremoring intensely. What is going on? Nearly scared of his wits, Lu Ran immediately leaped to his feet in horror. He was in the master teacher pavilion, the most important ground in Qingyuan Empire. There were many formations erected around it, such that even if an earthquake or avalanche were to occur, the master teacher pavilion would still be able to emerge from it completely intact. And yet, just what in the world could have happened for such intense tremors to occur? Horrified, he scanned the room warily, only to see the many tokens leaping down from their stands. Upon seeing this sight, Lu Ran's body shuddered in fear. He had never encountered or heard of such a situation before. Those tokens should have been lifeless objects. In the past, when he was cleaning those tokens, he had accidentally knocked down some of them, but it was not as if anything had happened to him. Why would they suddenly come to life, jumping down from their stands? Hualala. Falling to the ground, they stood in a neat row, as if filing in on someone's command, and with a simultaneous action, they turned to look in a specific direction. Completely chilled by that eerie sight, Lu Ran hid in the corner, covering his mouth tightly with his trembling hands. He was afraid that he would be killed if he were to make a move at this moment. Hong Long. Just as he was considering whether he should quietly sneak out of the room to report this matter to the pavilion master, he suddenly saw the unmoving sculpture of Kong Shi coming to life as well. It turned around and looked in the same direction as the tokens. Its eyes were deep and distant, reminiscent to that of a living person. In that instant, Lu Ran even forgot how to breathe. Kong Shi's sculpture slowly lowered its back and clasped its fist. "Greetings, my comrade." Chapter 1140 Zhong Xian visits a courtesan house. Some time later, Zhong Xian finally opened his eyes. The acknowledgement of Celestial Master Teacher this time around lasted much longer than before. Under the tempering of the unique aura, his aura became much sharper, and his thoughts became clearer than ever. Even though there was no tangible increase in his strength, the sharper clarity of his thoughts granted him better reflexes than before. At the same time, his eye of insight had also become keener. With his sharper perception, his ability to disguise himself was also enhanced too. As long as he willed it so, not even an 8-star master teacher would be able to notice anything unusual about him. On top of that, in the past, he was only able to discern flaws of individuals or objects which corresponded to a maximum to 4 cultivation stage higher than him, but now, he could see through the cultivation of those whose fighting prowess was on par with him. To put it in more direct terms, he was able to see through the flaws and openings in the cultivation of primordial spirit pinnacle expert. In the future, if he were to encounter such Saint 4 Dan pinnacle experts, even without the Library of Heaven's Path, he would be able to analyze their flaws just with his eye of insight and subdue them with ease. The growth of my eye of insight is great, But what is truly significant is that my soul depth has increased by 2.0 once more. Zhongxian thought in excitement. The changes in the Eye of Insight was great, but what that had left him the most excited was the explosive rise in his soul depth. This acknowledgement of Celestial Master Teacher had increased his soul depth by a whole 2.0. After undergoing the Saint Ascension ordeal, his soul depth had already been increased to 23.1, putting him on par with 7-star Pinnacle Master Teachers. With this further increase by 2.0, it had reached a staggering 25.1, putting him on an equivalent level as 8-star high-tier Master Teachers. With his enhanced soul depth, even 7-star Pinnacle Master Teachers would succumb easily to his impartation of Heaven's will and willingly submit to him. As long as I know their cultivation technique, I should be able to phase even 8-star low-tier Master Teachers with my impartation of Heaven's will, Zhongxian thought with clenched fists. For the impartation of Heaven's will to work, the knowledge which one was lecturing must be aligned with the essence of the world. Those who were able to become an 8-star Master Teacher were all individuals with near transcendental state of minds. At their level, a lecture of fundamentals would do little to phase their mind. However, if Zhongxian could uncover their cultivation technique and correct it, beguiling them with his impartation of Heaven's will shouldn't be too difficult. Speaking of which, my soul depth has already long reached the mark required for me to become a 7-star Master Teacher. It should be about time for me to start preparing to take the 7-star Master Teacher examination. Zhongxian thought as he exhaled deeply. More often than not, the limiting factor to a Master Teacher was his soul depth. High soul depth enhanced one's rate of cultivation and learning, so once one's soul depth reached the mark, one's cultivation and supporting occupations would swiftly follow suit. At the moment, the conflict between the Shenzhen faction and the Combat Master Hall seemed to be resolved. The members from both organizations were getting along amicably with one another, so that was a burden off his mind. With that, it was about time for him to focus on his own personal matters. It would be good to pay a visit to the Master Teacher Pavilion, meet some old friends, and obtain a 7-star Master Teacher emblem while he was at it. For this 6-star Master Teacher examination, he had chosen to challenge empire building. It was the most difficult examination, but its benefits lay in that he would be automatically entitled to the 7-star Master Teacher emblem once he met the prerequisites for the promotion. His soul depth and cultivation definitely met the mark for promotion, so what was lacking was his supporting occupations. So far, the occupations which he had achieved a mastery of 7-star in were Spirit Awakener, Demonic Tunist, and Poison Master. His other occupations, such as Apothecary, Blacksmith, and the Sort, were still at 6-star. Of them, the Spirit Awakener was not considered as a unique occupation, and it wouldn't reflect well on his reputation if it was revealed that he practiced poison arts. Thus, he only had a single 7-star supporting occupation at the moment. In order to qualify as a 7-star Master Teacher, I'll require 7 7-star supporting occupations. Currently, other than Appraiser and Soul Oracle, my other occupations are at 6-star Pinnacle. In his long journey, Zhongxian had picked up a total of 12 supporting occupations, and they were namely, 7-star Spirit Awakener, 7-star Demonic Tunist, 7-star Poison Master, 6-star Blacksmith, 6-star Physician, 6-star Painter, 6-star Beast Tamer, 6-star Celestial Designer, 6-star Terpsichore, 6-star Formation Master, 5-star Appraiser, and last but not least Soul Oracle. It went without saying that he couldn't use his Spirit Awakener, Poison Master, and Soul Oracle occupation, so he had only had the remaining 9 to rely on. For Formation Master, I have already achieved the level of 7-star, and Guild Leader Han has already helped me apply for an emblem. If nothing goes wrong, I should be able to collect it very soon. Back at the Qiuwu Palace, Zhongxian had managed advanced his mastery as a Formation Master straight to 7-star Pinnacle. In view of that, Guild Leader Han, as the head of the Qingyuan Empire Formation Master Guild, had taken the initiative to apply for the 7-star emblem for him, so he didn't have to go through the trouble of taking the examination. But even so, he only had 2 7-star supporting occupations with that. He still needed another 5 more. With my current identity, I should be able to access the libraries of the respective guilds directly. As long as I work fast, I should be able to be done with it in a single day. Zhong Xian thought. To others, advancing their supporting occupations was a lengthy and tiresome process, requiring them to work diligently over a long period of time to brush their knowledge and skills up to par. However, to Zhong Xian, it was truly nothing at all. Even if he were to take his time, he should be able to accomplish it within 2 days easily. As the capital of a Tier 1 empire, most major guilds can be found in Qingyuan City, such as the Apothecary Guild, Physician Guild, and the Beast Tamer Guild. However, I wonder if there is any Terpsichorean Guild, Celestial Designer Guild, and the others here as well. As Zhong Xian had mainly spent his time training the Combat Master Hall over the past 3 days, he still hadn't gotten a clear grasp over the layout of Qingyuan City yet. As such, he had no idea what kind of guilds there were here and where they were located either. If he could uncover this information beforehand, he would be spared much time fumbling around the city looking for the occupation guilds. With this thought in mind, Zhong Xian walked out of his room and shouted, "Sun Qiong, Sun Qiong." Sun Qiong would always gather intelligence from the locals as soon as they arrived in a new city, so there was no one apter than him to ask. "Teacher, Butler Sun headed out last night, and he isn't back yet." Hearing Zhong Xian's shouting, Liu Yang walked out and said. After they parted the previous night, Sun Qiong left the Combat Master Hall, and even till morning, there was still no trace of the latter to be seen. Zhong Xian frowned. "Do you know where he went then?" "I'm not too sure either. However, I have already entrusted some friends from the Combat Master Hall to help look into this matter." Liu Yang quickly replied. Zhong Xian nodded. "Tell him to look for me as soon as he returns." This wasn't the first time Sun Qiong had stayed out overnight, so Zhong Xian was not particularly worried about him. In any case, the Combat Master Hall was already looking for him, so it shouldn't be long before the other party returned. Noted. Liu Yang nodded. After which, Zhong Xian began making his way over to Hall Master Xing's residence. Since Sun Qiong wasn't around, he could only seek Hall Master Xing for help. "You wish to brush up your supporting occupations and push for a promotion to 7-star Master Teacher?" Hearing the intent behind Zhong Xian's visit, Hall Master Xing replied with a smile. "That's right." Zhong Xian nodded. "Elder Qi happens to be the old head of the Physician Guild, and given your deep mastery in the way of medicine, it shouldn't be too difficult for him to apply for a 7-star physician emblem, so there is no need for you to take the physician examination either." Hall Master Xing smiled. "Furthermore, the head of the Apothecary Guild, Wu Huayu, has heard news that you are currently residing in our Combat Master Hall. In a conversation we had recently, he indicated that he has helped you apply for a 7-star apothecary emblem, and he intends to pay you a visit and hand the emblem over to you personally sometime soon." Wu Huayu. Zhong Xian was startled. That name was astonishingly familiar to him. It was the apothecary whom he challenged during the pill debate conducted via the communication Jade Screenback when he was at the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy Apothecary School. Back then, he had given the latter several pointers in his pill forging, and in exchange, the latter had helped him apply for the grand intermittence grass he needed to save Wei Ruyan. All along, he had thought that the other party was a small fry in the Qingyuan Empire Apothecary Guild. Who could have thought that the other party would actually turn out be the head of the Apothecary Guild? Later on, it seemed like the other party had come over to Hongyuan Empire personally to deliver the grand intermittence grass, but Zhong Xian happened to be out with Luo Ruoxin during that period of time, so they missed one another. Factoring in those 2 occupations, I would have 4 7-star supporting occupations at the moment. I would just need 3 more in order to qualify as a 7-star Master Teacher. Hearing those words, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. It would have surely taken quite a bit of effort if he had to go through the various occupations one after another. Naturally, it would be for the best if he could save some time. As for the location of the respective guilds, our Qingyuan city doesn't have a Celestial Designer Guild, and the Beast Tamer Guild is located in a mountain range roughly 200 li away from the city. However, the Terpsichore Guild, Appraiser Guild, and Painter Guild are located in the city, so you could consider going for them instead. Hall Master Xing explained. "I see. I'll head to the Terpsichore Guild first then." Zhong Xian nodded. Since the Beast Tamer Guild wasn't in the city, It would be more efficient if he could clear all the examinations within the city before heading there. All right, allow me to bring you over then. Hall Master Xing nodded. It's fine, it's fine. There's no need to trouble Hall Master Xing over a minor matter like this. You just have to tell me the location, and I'll head there myself. Zhong Xian replied with a smile. He was only taking the examination for a supporting occupation. It would be an overkill if he were to have the head of the Combat Master Hall accompany him there. That would raise too much of a commotion, and it went without saying that it was at odds with his intention of maintaining a low profile. That works too. However, the branch of the Terpsichore Guild in Qingyuan Empire is located at a location which might be a little awkward for you to visit. At this point, Hall Master Xing suddenly recalled a matter, and a peculiar expression appeared on his face. Awkward for me to visit? Yuan. You have learned Terpsichorean arts yourself too, so you should know that Terpsichoreans utilize dance as an intermediary for their offense, and the location where dancers are the most sought after happens to be the Spring Pavilion. Hall Master Xing continued. Spring Pavilion? Zhong Xian was perplexed. Is that the name of the Terpsichorean Guild branch in Qingyuan City? It is the name of a courtesan house. Hall Master Xing replied awkwardly. A courtesan house? Zhong Xian's lips twitched. Yes, but it isn't the kind which you are thinking of. The courtesans there sell their craft, not their bodies. Nevertheless, it is still one of the most popular spots in the city with huge crowds walking in and out of its doors every day. Hall Master Xing said. Typically speaking, those who opted to learn Terpsichorean arts were top-notch beauties with excellent figures. A dance from them could easily enchant them, leaving them craving for more. But still, for an orthodox unique occupation to run a courtesan house, just the thought of it sounded deeply inconceivable. The founder of the Terpsichore Guild, Elder Gong's son, had her entire family massacred by an enemy back when she was still at a young age. She spent many years of her life refining her craft as a dancer, and eventually, she managed to exact vengeance on her enemy. After that, under Kongsha's guidance, she founded the Terpsichore occupation. However, in acknowledgement of her past as a dance courtesan, most of the Terpsichore Guild branches are still established as courtesan houses. Hall Master Xing explained. Zhong Xian nodded in realization. He had learned about the history of Elder Gong's son through the books in the Master Teacher Academy, but as most of them were carefully selected by master teachers, the portion regarding Elder Gong's son being a dance courtesan was probably intentionally left out due to it being viewed as dishonorable. Nevertheless, Kongsha didn't look down on Elder Gong's son despite her occupation. Instead, he said that there was no such thing as a lowly occupation. There were only lowly individuals in the world. As long as dance courtesans lived their life with dignity, they were individuals worthy of respect too. It is with this philosophy in mind that Terpsichore eventually managed to become a unique occupation as well. Yuan Zhongxian nodded. Kongsha was right. Every single occupation had to be respected. Even the most ordinary occupation served a vital purpose in this world, so they shouldn't be disregarded and looked down upon. As expected of Kongsha, his state of mind had indeed transcended mere forms. Where is the Spring Pavilion you spoke of located? Tossing aside the prejudice in his mind, Zhong Xian asked. It's located not too far away from the Combat Master Hall. After you leave here, turn left and head straight for roughly 10 li, and you should see it. Hall Master Xing said. After getting the location of the other two guilds out of Hall Master Xing, Zhong Xian finally clasped his fist and bade farewell. All right, I'll be heading over to take a look now. Farewell. After leaving the residence of Hall Master Xing, before Zhong Xian could even step out of the Combat Master Hall, he saw a young lady hurriedly walking towards him. Zhongsha, are you heading out? Why don't you bring me along with you? Chapter 1141 Zhong Xian visits a courtesan house too. The young lady was dressed in a light blue dress which shaped her elegant figure perfectly. A yellow silk belt was wrapped around her waist, accentuating the curves between her waist and her bottom. From afar, she looked like a bewitching succubus who would steal one's soul away at any time. The person wasn't anyone else other than the head of the bewitching devil faction, Hu Yaro Yaro. The bewitching devil faction was dissolved shortly after Zhongxian became the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, and Hu Yaoyao officially joined the Shenxian faction right afterward, becoming one of the strongest cultivators in its ranks. You want to tag along with me? That's fine. Seeing that it was Hu Yaoyao, Zhongxian nodded in agreement. Hu Yaoyoro's main supporting occupation in the Master Teacher Academy was terpsichorean arts, and she was even the direct disciple of school head Wei Runxue. Since he was heading to the Terpsichore Guild, it would be good to bring her along as well. We want to go too. Shortly after Zhongxian accepted her request, another voice sounded not too far away. Turning his head over, he saw Yu Feiya and Luo Chichi standing not too far away, staring at him intently. Looking at the curiosity in the eyes of the duo, Zhongxian shook his head and advised, "It would be best for the both of you to stay out of this matter. It isn't appropriate for the both of you to visit such a place. It isn't appropriate. Why can Hu Yaoyao tag along with you but not us?" Yu Feiya frowned in displeasure. It was one thing if the other party refused to bring all of them with him, but he had agreed to bring Hu Yaoyao along. This blatant discrimination left her feeling deeply indignant within, and her explosive temper flared up in an instant. Was Hu Yaoyao that important to him? On the other hand, while Luo Chichi didn't say a word, the unhappy gaze she shot him spoke the very same words too. "I'm heading to the Spring Pavilion, which happens to be a courtesan house too. As ladies, it won't be appropriate for you two to tag along," Zhongxian explained. "You are heading to a courtesan house? With Hu Yaoyao at that?" The duo exchanged gazes for a brief instant, and with uncanny harmony, they stretched their hands forward simultaneously to block Zhongxian's path. "No way, not over my dead body. Stop fooling around, I'm heading there because I have important matters to attend to." Zhongxian frowned upon seeing their actions. It was in view of their relatively mature characters that he treated the both of them well, patiently guiding them along whenever they faced any problem. Why were they suddenly throwing a tantrum at this moment? Seeing that Zhongxian was starting to get a little annoyed by their actions, Yu Feiya bit her lips and continued on, "Zhongsha, you are a master teacher, so how can you go to such a place? If you really need to, I can help you." "Help me?" Zhongxian shook his head. "Help me? How do you intend to help me? Can you give me a 7-star Terpsichore emblem or a 7-star Master Teacher emblem? To offer your help despite not knowing what is going on, aren't you worried that I might sell you out?" Sighing deeply, Zhongxian said, "I appreciate your good intentions, but I'm afraid that you aren't sufficient to help me on this matter." "You say that I am insufficient. How am I insufficient? I am very sufficient, all right?" Yu Feiya immediately lashed out as she stuck out her chest indignantly. "Is he scorning me for being not up to par with Hu Yaoyao? This is too much. Isn't hers just a little bigger? Mine is not too bad either, all right. Besides, insufficient. How do you know that I would be insufficient?" Just as she was feeling deeply stifled within, the young man continued speaking. "Spring Pavilion is the branch of the local Terpsichore Guild, and I intend to head there to take the 7-star Terpsichore examination so as to rake up the required supporting occupations for a promotion to 7-star Master Teacher. Hu Yaoyoro's main supporting occupation is Terpsichore, so it would be beneficial for her to head there too. On the other hand, your main supporting occupation is Formation Master, so it might not be appropriate for you to tag along too." Zhongxian was speechless. "You don't even know the slightest thing about Terpsichorean arts, and you still want to help me? This naivety is truly. Terpsichore Guild Branch. 7-star Terpsichore?" Yu Feiya froze upon hearing those words, and in the next moment, her face flushed crimson. Clearly, she was unaware of the matter too. When she heard the words courtesan house, her thoughts immediately turned carnal. It was fortunate that the other party didn't seem to understand what she was driving at, or else she would be too embarrassed to meet anyone. Why would the branch of the Terpsichore Guild be a courtesan house? The one who had asked this time around was Hu Yaoyao. It seemed like despite being a Terpsichore herself, she wasn't too aware of its history either. In truth, just like Yu Feiya and Luo Chichi, she honestly thought that Zhongsha was going to bring her to that kind of place. She was still feeling conflicted as to how she should respond should the other party raise some kind of unreasonable demand there, whether she should turn him down or accept him. But to think that the courtesan house would actually be the branch of a terpsichore guild instead. The history of terpsichore can be traced back to dance courtesan. Furthermore, only by frequently performing for others will one be able to advance her terpsichorean art swiftly and bring forth greater prowess in battle. As such, most of the terpsichore guilds, other than the branches set up within the master-teacher academies, are courtesan houses. Having understood what was going on, Luo Chichi swiftly explained slightly awkwardly. On the other hand, Zhongxian was slightly surprised to see that Luo Chichi even knew of this matter, and he nodded in agreement. With this, Yu Fei finally understood what was going on, but that only served to make her face redder than ever. Nevertheless, she still bucked up her courage and stared at Zhongxian intently. "I still want to tag along with you. Teacher, I wish to follow you too," Luo Chichi added. "All right then, you can follow me there if you really want to." Seeing that he was unable to talk the duo out of the matter, Zhongxian eventually conceded. In any case, it was not like he was going there to do something that couldn't be seen. He was only intending to take the terpsichore examination, so it mattered not whether he brought another person with him or not. Soon, the group of four set forth from the combat master hall, and after traveling roughly 10 li, a massive building appeared before their eyes. Even before coming close, they could already hear the excited voices within. There was a constant huge crowd walking to and fro the building, a truly bustling sight. Almost the entirety of the crowd were young men, and judging from their extravagant dress-up, they were likely to be from considerable backgrounds too. Too beautiful, she's truly too beautiful. Indeed. I would die just for an opportunity to share a night with a fairy like her. Die? I would be willing to die 10 times over for that. Stop the talking and get moving. Fairy Zi Yang's dance is about to begin. Such heated discussions could be heard all around the place. There was an excited gleam in the eyes of every single young man walking in or out of the building. It seems like terpsichore is a celebrated occupation in Qingyuan Empire, Zhongxian noted. He had been to many guilds over the past year, but it was truly rare to see one as lively as this. Who knows if it's really the occupation that is celebrated? Yu Fei harumphed coldly. "All right, let's head in." With a smile, Zhongxian began making his way in as well. Admittedly, the beauty of a dancing terpsichore was an allure hard for any young man to resist, but beyond that, the dance of terpsichores did help to temper one's soul too. If it wasn't for the latter, it was unlikely that so many cultivators would be so moved over just a few young ladies. "This brother over here, are you intending to enter the spring pavilion too?" Before Zhongxian could walk in, an astonished voice suddenly sounded. Turning around, he saw a young man staring at him with a flabbergasted look. "What's wrong?" Zhongxian asked with a frown. The other party had an appearance reminiscent of a man in his 30s, and shockingly, his cultivation was higher than Zhongxian's, reaching Saint 3 Dan primary stay. To possess such strength at such a young age, it was almost certain that the other party had a prominent background. "It's nothing, it's just that I find it weird." Swiftly taking a glance at Hu Yarrow and the others, the young man quickly shook his head. To come to a courtesan house despite having 3 ravishing beauties by his side, he sure was adventurous. And the most thing of all, those 3 ravishing beauties actually agreed to it, coming along with him even. It wasn't too hard for Zhongxian to fathom what the other party was thinking, but he couldn't be bothered to explain himself. With the 3 ladies following behind him, he made his way over to the entrance. A lanky attendant stood at the entrance. "Do you have any reservation?" Zhongxian shook his head. "I have something important to do here." "I'm not intending to. Everyone that comes here says that he has something important to do." "If you don't have a reservation, I'll have to ask you to turn around and leave. Our spring pavilion is already at max capacity, so even if you were to enter now, you won't be able to meet Fairy Zi Yang," said the attendant impatiently. The attendant didn't seem to care whom the other party was or what background he was from. From the looks of it, he must have encountered such situations often, and he knew very well that no one would dare to cause trouble right before the Terpsichore Guild too. "We're not here to meet." Slightly displeased by the self-assuming attitude of the attendant, Zhongxian was just about to clarify the matter when the young man whom he had spoken to earlier suddenly appeared by his side. This person over here is a buddy of mine. Why? Does my buddy need a reservation to enter the spring pavilion too? I dare not to. I didn't know that his Chugongzi's friend. The attendant quickly lowered his head respectfully. That better the case. Chugongzi nodded before turning to Zhongxian. This friend over here, I have a reservation at one of the suites inside. Why don't you join me? This. Zhongxian frowned. It's impossible to enter without a reservation. If you can't even enter the spring pavilion, you won't be able to accomplish whatever you intend to do here. Chugongzi reminded with a smile. I'll humbly accept your kind gesture then. Judging from the huge rejected crowd loitering around the entrance of the spring pavilion, it was apparent that it would be impossible to enter without making any prior reservation. It would be unseemly for him to make a huge ruckus just to step through those doors, so he decisively chose to take the other party up on his offer. Having thought things through, Zhongxian nodded, thanks. There's no need to stand on ceremony. With just a look, I can tell that you are one who pursues the same path as me. Naturally, it's only right for us to help one another in times of need. Chugongzi blinked his eyes, gesturing with an I understand look. Seeing how Chugongzi was acting, Zhongxian knew that the other party must be misunderstanding something here. He immediately tried to explain himself, but the other party simply shook off his words leisurely. Don't worry, I'm not so underhanded as go after the companions of a friend. Since I regard you as my friend, you can be certain that I'll respect your women as well. Zhongxian placed his hand on his forehead. What the heck was this? Forget it. At this point, it didn't feel like there was any point for him to explain anymore. The other party seemed to be so convinced of the matter that anything he said would probably be regarded as a mere excuse out of embarrassment. Following behind Chugongzi, it didn't take long for them to arrive at a suite on the second floor. The room was spacious and clean. It was divided into several smaller rooms which would allow a large group to reside within this space comfortably. More importantly, its walls were made of glass panels, granting one a clear view of everything within the grand hall of the spring pavilion. With just a look, Zhongxian could tell that the cost of reserving this single room had to be absurdly high. Young master. As soon as Chugongzi entered, several beautiful ladies immediately walked up to welcome him. They paled in comparison to Hu Yarou and the others, but indubitably, they were still charming individuals in their own right. Chugongzi nodded before turning to Zhongxian. They are all my lovers. I told them to come here and wait for me in advance. Well, you also know how watching the dance of a terpsichore can leave a raging flame burning within one's heart. If I don't find an avenue to vent my heat, I might just explode inside. Vent your heat? Indeed. The terpsichores of the spring pavilion only sell their craft and not their bodies. Oh, their graceful moves, those slim waists, and that elegant demeanor. Just one look is sufficient to draw out one's soul. Who in the world can bear to just watch and not do? Chugongzi shook his head. Seeing how you have brought a few people of your own over as well, I can see that we are men treading on the same path. Cough cough. Actually, I'm here for another matter. Seeing how the other party was getting more and more ludicrous with everything he said, Zhongxian couldn't help but interject. Actually, I'm here to take the terpsichore E. Don't worry, we are all men. I understand. Who doesn't want to take a terpsichore home? How could I forget my manners? My name is Chu Xiong. May I know how I can address you? With a smile, Chugongzi introduced himself. I am Zhongxian. Zhongxian replied with a nod. Previously, his attempts to conceal his name had ended up backfiring badly for him. With this trauma still vivid in his mind, he decided to just use his real name instead. In any case, he wasn't here to watch some fairy perform anyway. All he wanted was to take the terpsichore examination. So it's Zhongongzi. I have long heard of your name. With a hearty laugh, Chu Xiong said. Even though he had said that he had long heard of Zhongxian, from the looks on his face, it seemed to be just pleasantries. But that was to be expected. While Zhongxian's reputation resounded in the Hongyuan Empire, the same couldn't be said about the Qingyuan Empire. After all, there were many outstanding individuals here. Chapter 1142, I'm willing to offer a dance to you. You're being too polite. Seeing that the other party didn't know him, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. It was for the best that the other party didn't know him. Otherwise, if it were to be known that an honorable master teacher, as well as an esteemed guest of the Combat Master Hall, had visited a courtesan house, his reputation would be dragged through the mud. To be honest, Brother Zhong has chosen the right time to visit. Tonight, we have Fairy Ziyuan on the line, and Fairy Xian is going to perform her newly learned Terpsichorean art too. I can guarantee you that it's going to be a feast for the eyes, Chu Gongzi said excitedly. Ziyuan? Xian? Zhongxian asked doubtfully. You haven't heard of the both of them before? Noting the confusion in Zhongxian's voice, Chu Gongzi was taken aback. Zhongxian shook his head. To think that you actually wouldn't have heard of them, Brother Zhong, you are really. Chu Gongzi couldn't help but shake his head in disappointment. When he saw the other party brought a few beautiful ladies with him to the courtesan house, he thought that the other party was a fellow comrade. Who could have thought that he hadn't even heard of the two most famous terpsichores in the spring pavilion? Are they very famous? Using the word famous on them would be a gross underestimation of their reputation. There's probably no one in the entire Qingyuan city who hasn't heard of them. This is especially so for Fairy Xian. A 7-star terpsichore, her dance had bewitched countless audiences. Who knows how many men have emptied out their fortunes just to see her perform? However, it's a pity that she only performs once a month. For this very day, I had to book this suite a month ahead in advance. Seeing that Zhongxian truly knew nothing at all, Chu Gongzi shook his head in disapproval. You had to book the suite a month ahead. Zhongxian was speechless. To go to such an extent just to watch a couple of dances, the other party sure was tenacious. Chu Gongzi was just about to respond to Zhongxian's words when the sound of instruments suddenly echoed from the grand hall. He quickly waved his hands and headed towards the seat near the glass wall. We'll talk later, the performance is about to start soon. Soon after, a figure landed daintily on the stage in the grand hall. The figure was a young lady who seemed to be in her 20s. In contrast to the resplendent violet robe she wore, her feet were bare. However, when she flew across the air, her figure was truly reminiscent of a fairy. If one were to evaluate her just based on her looks itself, she would be beneath Hu Yarou and the others. However, the aura she exuded was reminiscent of a heavenly fairy, one that could ascend into the sky at any moment. It was like fiction had spilled over into reality, making her existence one that was extremely hard to fathom. Such a feeling was further enhanced by her clothes. Not only was it resplendent and gorgeous, it shaped out her figure perfectly, accentuating her natural grace. At the same time, it bared her skin at the perfect proportion. A little more revealed, and she might have appeared crass, a little less revealed, and she might have looked plain. With such, it was inevitable that her appearance could capture every single gaze in the room as soon as she landed. It was no wonder why Chu Gongzi would be so moved by her. If not for the fact that Zhongxian's state of mind had already reached a near-transcendental level, he might be tempted to take a few more glances at her while sighing in pleasure. This is Fairy Xian? Zhongxian asked. Of course not. This is Fairy Ziyuan, Fairy Xian's junior. Without turning his gaze from the stage, Chu Gongzi replied indignantly. Seeing how the other party wasn't even willing to tear his eyes away from the stage for a single instant, as if a little boy who had never seen a woman in his life, Zhongxian could only shake his head bitterly. Looking out of the glass wall, he took a swift glance of his surroundings. Be it the audiences in the suites beside him or amidst the grand hall below, their eyes were all fixed on the young lady on the stage as well. It was as the young lady had already stolen their souls from the moment she first arrived in the grand hall. A dance to steal the world. This is indeed a formidable occupation. Seeing how everyone was reacting, Zhongxian couldn't help but remark in his head. It was only due to the fact that his mastery in Terpsichorean art was equivalent to a 7-star terpsichore and his powerful soul that the other party's dance couldn't faze him. But the same couldn't be said about the others. Their souls were more vulnerable, so it was inevitable that the dance would put them into a deep trance. Even though that Fairy Ziyuan is only a 6-star pinnacle terpsichore, Her prowess in terpsichorean arts seems to be significantly more refined than Wei Ranxue, the head of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy Terpsichore School, as well as Hu Yaoiro's teacher, Wei Ranxue, was a 6-star pinnacle terpsichore too. Her beauty was on par with Fairy Ziyuan, but in terms of the allure of their dances, she didn't even come close to matching up with Fairy Ziyuan. Every single gesture of the young lady on the stage was just so graceful that others would inadvertently fight their attention, completely stolen by it. Clearly, the young lady's comprehension of terpsichorean arts had already achieved an incredible level. Esteemed as one of the 10 great master teachers, it is inevitable that Wei Ranxue's dance would be a little more rigid in consideration of her reputation. This resulted in the loss of the worldliness in her dance, and the lack of this quality resulted in a steep decline in the prowess of her dances. With just a look, Zhong Xian was able to analyze the problem in Wei Ranxue's dance. Those who hadn't gone through the vicissitudes of life wouldn't be able to devote feelings into their dance to evoke a certain quality, and as a result of that, their dance would be lacking in appeal. This appeal was extremely important for bring forth the true prowess of a terpsichorean art in battle. It was no wonder why the branches of the Terpsichorean Guild were established as courtesan houses. It was indeed beneficial for mastering this occupation. Without a doubt, if Wei Ranxue were to battle with Fairy Ziyuan, the latter would emerge victorious. While Zhong Xian was still deep in thoughts, the young lady suddenly twisted gracefully, and a set of beautiful dance moves flowed smoothly from her. Her dance was silent and tranquil, reminiscent to the soothing atmosphere of a river gentle knocking on a boulder amidst a lush, remote mountain. Those watching it instantaneously fell into a unique state of mind which placed their bodies and souls in a state of absolute relaxation. Watching such dances regularly will be beneficial to the growth of one's soul. After taking a short look, Zhong Xian nodded in approval. Even though the dance was riddled with so many flaws that he could hardly bring himself to watch it, its effects to place one in a calm state was still undeniable. By immersing themselves into such a state of mind often, one's soul would be nourished. Perhaps, just like what he had guessed before, the crowd had come not for the allure of the dancers but the pleasurable sensation of one's soul growing. With such thoughts in mind, he subconsciously turned his head towards Chu Gongzi, only to see the latter's eyes glowing brightly as his saliva dripped all over his clothes. Ah! Astonished, Zhong Xian swiftly turned his eyes toward the other audience as well. Just like Chu Gongzi, they were completely absorbed into the dance too. Saliva was trickling down their cheeks, and there was an inexplicably lecherous expression on their faces. From the looks of the faces, if not for fear of the prowess of the Terpsichore Guild, those men might have rushed forward and committed atrocities. It seems like I have overthought the matter. Zhong Xian rubbed his glabella as a bitter smile surfaced on his lips. Very soon, the dance came to an end, and Fairy Ziyuan bowed gracefully before taking her leave. Following which, a middle-aged lady stepped out, and surveying the crowd, she said, "Tonight, our spring pavilion will be auctioning an exclusive dance from Fairy Ziyuan. If anyone is interested in it, feel free to make a bid. The starting bid is 50 high-tier spirit stones, and every raise must be of 10 high-tier spirit stones at the minimum." Exclusive dance? Zhong Xian asked in confusion. At this moment, Chu Gongzi had finally recovered from his trance, and he quickly wiped away the drool from his mouth as he explained, "It means that the fairy dance for you personally. Just imagine it in your head, watching the dance of a fairy at close proximity within a private room. How could one not fall into a frenzy over it? It's precisely due to the popularity of exclusive dances that they are priced so steeply." Zhong Xian came to a realization. The execution of terpsichorean arts was extremely taxing on one's soul. Most terpsichores would only be able to dance at her full prowess once or twice per day due to the limitations of their souls. But who could have thought that such an opportunity could actually be auctioned as a limited commodity too? For the starting bid of a single dance to be 50 high-tier spirit stones. How fearsome. Even the private lesson from a 6-star pinnacle master teacher wasn't worth as much. "I'll offer 60. 70. Ha, aren't you embarrassed to be only bidding 70? 100. A huge commotion broke out on the audience stand. In just a few moments, the price had already exceeded 100. Eventually, the opportunity was auctioned off at a final price of 150 high-tier spirit stones by a gentleman in one of the suites. To be honest, Zhongxian was already doubting his existence at this very moment. Back when he was still at Hongyuan Empire, he had to toil his body away just to earn a couple of high-tier spirit stones. And yet, the other party had managed to earn a whole 150 high-tier spirit stones just by executing a single dance. Was this a sign from the heavens that it was high time for him to switch occupations? With his profound comprehension of terpsichorean arts, his dances should at least be far more valuable than the young lady on the stage. Why didn't you bid for Fairy Ziyuan's exclusive dance? Zhongxian turned to Chu Gongzi and asked curiously. From the fact that the other party had booked this suite, it could be seen that on top of being a fan of terpsichorean arts, he was also an individual with no lack of money. Logically speaking, he should be interested in an opportunity at an exclusive dance with Fairy Ziyuan, so why didn't he make a bid? Naturally, I am saving up my money to purchase Fairy Xian's exclusive dance, Chu Gongzi replied proudly. Fairy Xian? Yuan, that's right. Look, she's coming out now. Chu Gongzi's eyes lit up. Zhongxian quickly turned his head over and saw a huge commotion rippling across the audience stand. Following which, another young lady gracefully flew down onto the stage as well. This young lady was clearly much more beautiful than Ziyuan, and her figure was more alluring as well. Astonishingly, she was on par with even Hu Yaoyao. More importantly, she carried an incredible air of worldliness, seemingly ready to plunge into the river of love with another at any moment. A 7-star pinnacle terpsichore. No wonder, Zhongxian remarked internally. This explained why so many people were infatuated with her. Hoo. While Zhongxian was still in thought, the young lady beneath began dancing. Her movements were graceful and exquisite, and it seemed to be playing on the souls of the spectators. Once again, Zhongxian turned his head over to look at Chu Gongzi, and as expected, the latter was drooling more than ever. Shaking his head, Zhongxian quietly turned his attention back to the dance on the stage. It must be said that Fairy Xian's comprehension of terpsichorean arts had reached an astonishing level. Every single movement of hers seemed to be aligned with the natural beauty of the world, causing even one's heart to beat in tempo with her dance. As long as she wills it so, she could easily cause the hearts of every single one here to come to a complete halt with her dance. Zhongxian remarked meaningfully. If her dance could even control the beating of one's heart, it would be no exaggeration to say that she wielded the life of every single being within this grand hall at this very moment. Truly, no occupations should be underestimated. Before long, the dance came to an end, and the auctioning of Fairy Xian's exclusive dance began. The starting bid of Fairy Xian's exclusive dance will be 500 high-tier spirit stones, and every increment must not be less than 100. All right, let's begin the auction right now, the middle-aged lady announced once more. I offer 600, 800, 1,000. Fairy Xian's exclusive dance was indeed far more popular than Fairy Ziyuan's. In the blink of an eye, in the literal sense of the phrase, the price had already shot up to 1,000 high-tier spirit stones. 1,000 high-tier spirit stones, just to watch a single dance? Zhongxian shook his head bitterly. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he might have thought that the world had gone mad. While he was still deep in thought over the matter, he suddenly heard the voice of Chu Gongzi sounding beside him. I offer a concentrated high-tier spirit stone. A concentrated high-tier spirit stone? Zhongxian was startled for a moment before his eyes widened in shock. One must know that even the Combat Master Hall only had 10 concentrated high-tier spirit stones. To offer a concentrated high-tier spirit stone just to watch a dance. This darned prodigal. As long as I could obtain an exclusive dance from Fairy Xian, there's no price too heavy for me to pay. Noting Zhongxian's shocked stare, Chu Gongzi replied. There's no price too heavy for you to pay. Zhongxian's lips twitched. At this moment, he suddenly recalled a matter, and his eyes lit up. Getting to his feet, he looked at Chu Gongzi confidently and said, why don't we do this then? Instead of watching her dance, why don't you give that concentrated high-tier spirit stone to me, and I'll dance for you instead? Chu Gongzi. Chapter 1143, Wei Ranshua's senior Chu Gongzi nearly collapsed onto the ground. The reason why I wish to watch Fairy Xian's exclusive dance is because I want some private time with her. Who wants to watch a man like you dance? I don't have such inclinations. Zhongshe, calm down. Unable to watch it any longer, Hu Yarou rushed forward to hold Zhongshen back. Luo Chichi and Yu Fei also slapped their forehead helplessly. They knew that Zhongshe had always been lacking in EQ, but who could have thought that it would be so dire? Given how that Chu Xiong fellow was drooling all over his clothes earlier, do you think that it's really the Terpsichorean art which he is appreciating? For you to dance for him. Honestly, he wouldn't watch it even if you were to pay him, and you still expect him to pay you a concentrated high-tier spirit stone over it. You are really thinking too much. Zhong Gongzi, I think it would be better for you to dance for these beautiful ladies instead. I'm afraid that I don't have such an interest. With a face flushed crimson, Chu Gongzi finally caught a breather and replied. Is that so? What a pity. I have to say that you have missed a really good opportunity. Zhong Xian shook his head. He hadn't offered to dance for the other party out of mere greed for the money. Instead, he had discreetly activated his eye of insight to assess the condition of the young man beside him. Considering the value of a concentrated high-tier spirit stone within Qingyuan Empire, which clan could possibly give a concentrated high-tier spirit stone to a profligate son to squander away? Furthermore, given the fact that he had achieved a cultivation of Saint 3 Dan at such a young age, it was apparent that he wasn't an irrational individual who allowed lust to get the better of him. It might sound ridiculous for a rational individual to pay such a hefty price just to watch a dance, but Chu Gongzi's true goal was actually to resolve the flaws in his soul so as to advance his cultivation. As long as the flaws in his soul remained, it would be nigh impossible for him to advance to primordial spirit realm. It was precisely because Zhong Xian had seen through it that he offered to dance for the other party. Even though Fairy Xian was a 7-star terpsichore, in terms of her ability to heal souls, there was no way she could come close to matching up to Zhong Xian. If Chu Gongzi had agreed to it, Zhong Xian was confident that he would be able to nurse the other party's soul to perfection. However, it was a pity that the other party didn't treasure this opportunity. Opportunity? It's fine, I don't need it. Chu Gongzi quickly shook his head. While the duo was chatting, the auction beneath concluded. The value of a concentrated high-tier spirit stone was far above 1,000 high-tier spirit stones, and not to mention, it was a commodity which was difficult to obtain in Qingyuan Empire even if one had the money for it. Inevitably, the slot went to Chu Xiong. Shortly after the auction concluded, the room to the suite opened, and Fairy Xian, who had been dancing below earlier, slowly walked in. At this point, she had already switched to another set of clothes. It was less revealing than the one she had performed in earlier, but it still complemented her well nevertheless. With her new set of clothes, the aura of worldliness around her had vanished without a trace, and instead, she resembled a noble from a prestigious clan instead. At close proximity, one could see that her skin was exquisitely delicate, reminiscent of silk. On top of that, the graceful aura which she exuded made one unwilling to avert one's eyes after taking a look. Xian pays respect to Chu Gongzi. Xian greeted with a smile. You're too polite. Chu Gongzi hurriedly got to his feet before introducing, this is my friend, Zhong Xian, Zhong Gongzi. Pleased to meet you, Zhong Gongzi. Xian bowed slightly. Zhong Xian nodded before asking, since you are a terpsichore of the local terpsichore guild, may I ask where should I go and whom I should approach in order to take the 7-star terpsichore examination? Since Fairy Xian was standing right before him at this moment, it was natural that he should make use of this opportunity to ask the matter. The 7-star terpsichore examination? Surprised by the abrupt question, Xian took a look around the room before her gaze finally fell on Hu Yarou. Is this young lady here going to take the examination? No, it's me. Zhong Xian replied. You? Fairy Xian was visibly startled for a moment. There was no explicit rule that prevented a male from learning terpsichorean arts, but conventionally, it had been regarded as a female occupation. This was the very first time she saw a male asking to challenge the terpsichore examination. That's right. Zhong Xian nodded. Under his guidance, Hu Yaroiro's proficiency as a terpsichore had advanced to the level of 6-star pinnacle. Nevertheless, she still needed more practice before she was ready to be promoted to 7-star. Knowing what Fairy Xian was thinking of, Zhongxian flicked his wrist and took out his 6-star terpsichore emblem. That was the emblem which Wei Ranxue had applied for him previously. Taking a closer look at the emblem and confirming its authenticity, Fairy Xian turned to Zhongxian apologetically and said, "You are really a 6-star terpsichore. I'll bring you over right now then. Chu Gongzi, pardon me, but I'll have to ask you to wait for me here for a moment. I'll be back after dealing with this matter to conduct an exclusive dance for you." "It's fine." Chu Gongzi nodded. "Actually, since I'm free at the moment, is it fine if I follow you all over as well?" To be honest, he was rather surprised to learn that Zhongxian was actually a terpsichore too. The seductive moves of a dancing man. Just the thought of it left him feeling a little agitated within. Fairy Xian turned to Zhongxian to seek his opinion. Typically speaking, the examination would be conducted in a private location so as to ensure confidentiality and absolute silence for the examiner to showcase the full extent of his abilities. Since Zhongxian was the one going to take the examination, it would only be right for her to seek his opinion on the matter. "It's fine." Zhongxian nodded. In the first place, terpsichorean art was a performance art meant for others to spectate. It mattered not to him whether he performed before a crowd or not. "Zhong Gongzi, this way please." Knowing that the other party was here to challenge the 7-star examination, Fairy Xian's attitude became significantly more amiable. She began leading the way forward. Stepping out of the grand hall, they arrived in a spacious room. A middle-aged lady walked up to them and frowned. "Xian, why did you bring others in here?" "Teacher, Zhong Gongzi over here is a 6-star terpsichore. He intends to challenge the 7-star examination." After saying those words, Fairy Xian passed Zhongxian's 6-star terpsichore emblem over. "Zhong Gongzi." Lowering her head to look at the emblem, a look of astonishment surfaced on the middle-aged lady's face. "You are Zhongxian, Zhongshe? From Hongyuan Empire?" "Achem." Zhongxian was perplexed to hear those words. "You know me. I am Wei Ranqin, the head of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy Terpsichore School. Wei Ranxue is my junior," the middle-aged lady replied with a kind smile. "Not too long ago, she sent a message over and told me about your affairs. It's truly incredible for a man as young as you to achieve the level of unadorned quintessence in your terpsichorean art." "I see." Zhongxian nodded in realization. Wei Ranxue had never spoken about Wei Ranqin before, but given how the latter knew of his background, her words should be true as well. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Due to the considerations as a result of her identity as a master teacher, Junior Ranxue hasn't been able to release her inner self through her dance, resulting in an awkward rigidity in her move. As a result, she has stagnated at 6-star pinnacle for a very long time. It's thanks to your guidance that she's able to take the final step forward and achieve the level of 7-star. Guild leader Wei Ranqin said with a smile. "She specially sent a message over saying that you might visit our guild in recent days, and she entrusted me to relay her gratitude to you if I were to meet you. Since you are intending to take the 7-star terpsichore examination, allow me to make preparations for you now." Guild leader Wei Ranqin nodded. "I'll be troubling you then." Zhongxian clasped his fist in response. "It's no problem. It's also a good thing for us if more geniuses to emerge from our terpsichore guild." Wei Ranqin replied with a smile. After which, she turned around and instructed, "Xian, accompany Zhongshe here for a moment while I make some preparations for the examination." "Yes." After Wei Ranqin left, Fairy Xian and Chu Gongzi couldn't help but reassess Zhongxian with a look of bewilderment on their faces. To them, guild leader Wei was a nonchalant person who rarely showed her emotions. Power and prestige, these are things which didn't seem to affect her in the least. This was the very first time that Fairy Xian had seen her teacher getting so excited. "Brother Zhong, you are really a terpsichore?" Chu Gongzi still found it difficult to believe the matter. "That's right." Zhongxian nodded. "Aya, how could I have been so dense?" Hearing Zhongxian acknowledge the matter, Chu Gongzi slapped his forehead and exclaimed, "What's wrong?" Zhongxian was bewildered by Chu Gongzi's abrupt words. If I were to become a terpsichore too, I would have more opportunities to come into close range with other terpsichores too. If so, I'll be able to watch as many dances as I want to without spending a single gold coin. More importantly, as the saying goes, those standing by the gazebo are the first to acquire the moon one. That must be the reason why Brother Zhong has 3 ravishing beauties following you. You are truly a winner in life, my idol, Chu Gongzi exclaimed with a look of deep regret on his face. How could I have been so foolish back then? If only I have insisted on learning terpsichorean arts back then, my life could have very well taken a wholly different trajectory. Zhong Xian was speechless. Reluctant to bother himself with this fellow whose mind was filled with nothing but nonsense, Zhong Xian turned to Fairy Xian and asked, "Pardon me, but I would like to ask how the 7-star terpsichore examination is conducted." "You don't know?" Fairy Xian was taken aback. To challenge the 7-star terpsichore examination despite not knowing what it was, the other party sure was gutsy. "To be honest, I don't really know." Zhong Xian shook his head. The 7-star terpsichore examination doesn't differ much from the 6-star examination, so you need not worry too much about it. Shaking her head, Fairy Xian replied. Cough cough, then, may I ask how the 6-star examination is conducted? Zhong Xian scratched his head. He hadn't taken the 6-star terpsichore examination either. The emblem he had was specially applied by Wei Ranxue. As such, he had no idea how the examination went either. Hearing those words, Fairy Xian couldn't help but frown in displeasure. It is one thing for you to not know about the 7-star examination, but as a 6-star terpsichore, do you think that it makes sense for you not to know about the 6-star examination too? Aren't you clearly toying with me? To tell you the truth, I didn't take the 6-star terpsichore examination. My emblem was obtained by a special application from school head Wei Ranxue, so I'm not very sure about the procedures for the 6-star examination either. Seeing that the other party was mistaking his intentions, Zhong Xian swiftly clarified. You obtained your emblem through a special application? How is that possible? How would others know how deep of an understanding you have in terpsichorean art without undergoing a formal examination? This is preposterous. Fairy Xian flung her sleeves in displeasure. Even if you wanted to boast, at least come up with something more believable. While the Terpsichore Guild wasn't as strict and rigid as the upper 9 paths occupation, it was still a unique occupation. Every single examination needed to be invigilated by numerous elders of at least equal ranking, and only after receiving the approval of the majority would the individual be qualified to receive the emblem. To be given the emblem without even undergoing the examination. You must be kidding me. She had been considered as a once-in-century genius in terpsichorean arts, but even she had never encountered something as absurd as this. Not expecting the other party to doubt him despite speaking of the truth, Zhong Xian had no idea how he should explain himself. Sighing deeply, he could only give up on the matter and relent. Forget it then. May I know where your guild's library is? I would like to browse through the books if possible. Since the other party was unwilling to speak, he would just have to uncover the answer himself through the books. Besides, he had only compiled the 6-star Heaven's Path terpsichorean art so far. While his prowess was already on par with 7-star terpsichore, he would still have to compile the 7-star Heaven's Path terpsichorean art before he could be considered as a full-fledged 7-star terpsichore. Teacher will be turning very soon, so just wait here for a moment longer. Fairy Xian waved her hands impatiently. However, before she could finish her words, Guild leader Wen Ranqin suddenly returned back to the room with a bright smile on her face. Congratulations, Zhongsha. Junior Ranxue has reported your mastery in terpsichorean arts to the headquarters previously, and it has cleared their reviews. Thus, when I tried applying for the 7-star terpsichore examination on your behalf previously, the headquarters replied that they would bestow you with the 7-star emblem directly, so you don't have to take the examination anymore. Wei Ranqin said as she passed an emblem over. Thank you for that. Taking the emblem, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. It's really possible to obtain the emblem without undergoing any examination. Fairy Xian froze on the spot. Chapter 1144, News on Sun Qiong. It was just a moment ago that she said that it was ridiculous for one to obtain an emblem without any examination when her teacher delivered an emblem straight to the other party in the very next moment. If only there was a hole in the ground at this moment, she would burrow into it without any hesitation. Too embarrassing. It was too embarrassing. In the first place, it was rare for a male to learn terpsichorean arts, but not only was the young man before her a terpsichore, his emblems were even given straight to him by the Terpsichore Guild. Was this for real? Teacher, do the headquarters have a procedure to give out emblems straight? Why haven't I heard of it? Unable to stand it any longer, Fairy Xian asked. The headquarters grant special care to those who have made great contribution to the terpsichore occupation, and this includes certain privileges in the promotion of ranks as well. Previously, Zhongshe has altered the dance of the rippling cloud robe, granting it prowess on par with a grade 7 terpsichorean art. With such contribution, putting aside a mere 7-star emblem, as long as Zhongshe wills for it, he can easily qualify as an elder of our branch. Wei Ranqin replied. Altered the dance of the rippling cloud robe? He's the one who altered that terpsichorean art. Fairy Xian's body trembled as disbelief sank into her eyes. She had long heard of that someone had managed to improve the dance of the rippling cloud robe, and she was astonished by the significant rise in its prowess when she cultivated the altered version. Not only was it far stronger than before, the soul energy required for its execution was also reduced by at least 2/3. With this, the technique had become far more practical in battle than before. At the very least, terpsichores wouldn't find themselves completely drained and powerless after executing this single technique. It was in view of the astonishing prowess of the altered dance of the rippling cloud robe that nearly all 6-star terpsichores and above in their guild had cultivated this terpsichorean art. She had thought that the person behind the alteration would at least be an 8-star terpsichore at the very minimum. Who could have thought that the person would actually be a 20-year-old young man? More importantly, she had even mocked the other party just a moment ago. UN. Not only did Zhongshe alter the dance of the rippling cloud robe, he also has a unique insight into the essence of terpsichorean arts. Your senior Aunt Ranxue has reported all of these in detail to the Terpsichore Guild, and it's in view of those that the headquarter made a special exception and distributed the 7-star emblem to him straight. Guild leader Wei Ranqin explained. Even though she had learned of the matter from her junior through the conversations that they had a while ago, she still couldn't help but find the entire matter inconceivable, especially after seeing how young Zhongxian was in person. It was one thing for him to have such a deep understanding of terpsichore despite his young age, but more than that, he had also shown outstanding accomplishments in the other occupations as well. Even she couldn't help but feel deep admiration for the other party. This. Fairy Xian's face turned completely scarlet from embarrassment. Biting her lips, she stepped forward and bowed apologetically. Zhongshe, I apologize for my previous rudeness. I hope that you can forgive my ignorance. It's fine, I won't take it to heart, so you don't have to worry about it. Zhongxian waved his hands and smiled. If you still feel bad about the matter, it'll do as long as you help my brother over here resolve the issues with his soul during the exclusive dance with him later on. With his current state of mind, the views of others couldn't faze him anymore. Honestly, it didn't really matter to him whether Fairy Xian apologized or not. Thank you. Seeing that the other party didn't blame him for this matter, Fairy Xian bowed gratefully. After which, she turned her gaze towards Chu Gongzi to ask the latter what kind of flaws his soul had, only to see the latter staring at Zhongxian with an astonished look on his face. Why you? You know about the injuries of my soul? He hadn't told anyone about the injuries of his soul for fear that his enemies would use it against him. As such, not even his father was aware of the matter. All along, he had been hiding it under the cover as a profligate individual, and yet, a person whom he had just met an hour ago pointed it out so easily, as if it was nothing at all. While your soul may seem compact, there are still some portions which aren't fusing well with the rest of your soul. If I'm not mistaken, it's probably the result from being assaulted by an enemy while you were in the midst of a breakthrough to the embryonic soul realm, Zhongxian said with a smile. With the increment in the prowess of his eye of insight, even if Zhongxian didn't use the Library of Heaven's Path, he could still easily see what was wrong with the latter. The other party's soul had been damaged due to being assaulted by an enemy during a crucial stage in a breakthrough, but fortunately, the injuries he had sustained didn't seem to be too severe. Furthermore, it seemed like he had been visiting the spring pavilion regularly to nourish his soul through terpsichorean arts, and he was just a little short form making a complete recovery. As long as Fairy Xian were to earnestly help him resolve his issue, he should be able to make a full recovery very soon after watching a few more terpsichorean arts. Thus, while the process might be a little slower then, there was actually no need for Zhongxian to make a move. Even though Chu Gongzi had only budded up to him thinking that he was a fellow comrade treading down the same path, ultimately, it was still thanks to the other party that he was able to enter the spring pavilion and meet guild leader Wei Ranqin so easily. Naturally, it would only be right for him to return the favor, especially since it was only a trivial matter. Chu Gongzi's face turned scarlet. He couldn't find any words to speak at this moment. It was true that his injuries were caused from being assaulted by an enemy in the midst of his breakthrough to embryonic soul realm. However, as this matter concerned a very huge secret, he dared not speak of it to another soul. Yet, the young man before him was able to see through him so easily, even accurately determining the cause of his injury. The other party's eye of discernment was truly, in every sense of the word, astounding. He had thought that the other party was only a lecherous fellow, but who could have thought that he would actually be a hidden expert? Guild leader Wei, is it fine if I browse through the 7-star terpsichore books in your library? Having dealt with the matter over here, Zhongxian turned to Wei Ranqin and clasped his fist. As a 7-star terpsichore, you are definitely qualified to browse through our 7-star terpsichore books. This way please. Wei Ranqin nodded before leading the way forward. Following behind her, it didn't take long for them to arrive in a vast room. All of the books of our terpsichore guild is in there. As long as you have the required emblem on hand, you will be able to enter and leave the premises freely. Wei Ranqin said as she gestured forward. I'll be troubling guild leader Wei to take care of my 3 friends over here then. This young lady over here is Hu Yao, and she's the prodigious disciple of school head Wei. Zhongxian nodded as he gestured to the 3 ladies behind him. Junior Ranchue's disciple? Guild leader Wei was surprised as she turned her gaze over to Hu Yao. Yao pays respect to senior aunt. Hu Yao quickly stepped forward and bowed politely. Not bad, not bad. With a look, guild leader Wei couldn't help but nod in approval. On top of their innate talent, terpsichores rely heavily on their external appearances as well. The more beautiful a terpsichore was, the more likely she would be able to bring forth greater prowess from terpsichorean arts. Regardless of whether it was her figure or her appearance, it was apparent that Hu Yaoiro's looks were far above that of Fairy Xian. As long as she had a good teacher to guide her along, she would be bound to achieve great things in the future. Guild leader Wei nodded in satisfaction. Seeing this, Zhongxian decided to speak no longer, and taking out his emblem, he entered the library. The library was extremely vast. Countless books were stacked compactly in neatly positioned shelves, which seemed to extend all the way to the horizon. Without bothering himself with the 1-star to 6-star books, Zhongxian headed straight towards the section with 7-star terpsichore books and began scanning through them with his gaze. Hualala! Countless books materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path. After undergoing the 4th acknowledgement of Celestial Master Teacher, while the Library of Heaven's Path didn't undergo any changes, Zhongxian's ability to process things did rise significantly. As such, the rate at which he could collect books was also raised considerably. It took him less than an hour to collect all of the 7-star terpsichore books into the Library of Heaven's Path. Compile. With a thought, Zhongxian gathered all of the books together and formed the 7-star Heaven's Path terpsichorean art. Another hour later, he exhaled deeply, and a brilliant gleam shone from his eyes. Having grasped the 7-star Heaven's Path terpsichorean art, his mastery as a terpsichore had risen to the level of a 7-star pinnacle terpsichore. Due to the overwhelming prowess of the Heaven's Path terpsichorean art, his skills could be said to be comparable to most 8-star primary terpsichores. But of course, that was only in terms of knowledge and mastery. With his current Saint Tu Dan pinnacle cultivation, if he were to meet a real 8-star terpsichore, he would do well to flee as fast as he could. As long as his cultivation hadn't met the mark, he wouldn't be able to display the full prowess of his terpsichorean arts. All right, another supporting occupation cleared. 2 more left to go, and I'll be able to be promoted to 7-star master teacher. Standing up and stretching his back, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. Perhaps I should try the appraiser hall and the painter guild. The examinations of those 2 occupations are slightly simpler. Zhongxian thought with a smile. The beast tamer guild was a considerable distance away, and considering that it was an upper 9 paths occupation, its examination was likely to be more rigid and rigorous, thus more time-consuming as well. Since that was the case, it would be better for him to drop by the appraiser hall and the painter guild to take a look. Walking out of the library, Zhongxian saw that guild leader Wei and the others were still standing around the area. Thus, he walked up to them and said, I have truly imposed on guild leader Wei this time around. I still have matters to attend to, so I'm afraid that I'll have to take my leave first. Guild leader Wei, we'll be taking our leave too. Seeing that Zhongxian was about to leave, Luo Chichi and Yu Fei clasped their fists as well. Yuan guild leader Wei nodded. I'll keep Yaro Yaro here with me for the time being. There are some things which I would like to ask her. Zhongxian took a look at Hu Yaro Yaro to seek her opinion on the matter, and only after seeing the latter nod did he reply, all right. Zhongshe, are we returning back to the Combat Master Hall? Leaving the Terpsichore Guild, Yu Fei turned to Zhongxian and asked. I'm intending to drop by the Appraiser Hall. If you have things to attend to, feel free to leave. Zhongxian said. IIT's fine, I'll head there with you. Yu Fei replied swiftly. Same here too. Luo Chichi nodded. Seeing that the duo was determined to continue tagging along with him, Zhongxian decided to say no more. After determining the direction of the appraiser hall based on the description Hall Master Xing provided him, he was just about to head over when a young man dressed in black suddenly approached him. May I ask if you are Zhongxian, Zhongshe? The young man clasped his fist and asked. I am. Zhongxian replied with a frown. He hardly knew anyone in Qingyuan Empire, so why would anyone seek him? Our old master wants to meet you. The young man said. Your old master wants to meet me? Zhongxian was perplexed. Who is your old master? You will know once you meet him, the young man replied nonchalantly. Pardon me, I'm not free. Zhongxian waved his hand and turned the other party down. He was currently busy at the moment, so why should he waste his time on someone who wasn't even willing to report his own name? He, our old master said that Zhongshe will dare not turn down his invitation. A peculiar smile appeared on the young man's face, seemingly suggesting that he might have already anticipated such an outcome. Oh, I dare not turn down his invitation? Zhongxian scoffed in displeasure. It was one thing for the other party to not report his name despite requesting to meet with him, but to utter such conceited words on top of that. It was apparent from this that the other party couldn't possibly be an upright individual. Zhongshe, why don't you take a look at this before making your decision? The young man flicked his wrist and passed an item over. Perplexed, Zhongxian took a look at it. It was the tattered fabric of a robe. With just one look, Zhongxian narrowed his eyes menacingly. You kidnapped Sun Qiong? He was certain that the fabric had come from Sun Qiong's clothes. He hadn't paid any heed to Sun Qiong's disappearance, thinking that the latter was out feasting, drinking, and saving damsels in distress, enjoying his life to the fullest. He didn't think that the latter would actually be captured by someone else. More importantly, it was apparent that the other party knew who he was, but despite so, the other party still chose to resort to such a brazen and arrogant course of action. We are currently hosting Butler Sun in our manor as a guest. Our old master has entrusted me to bring Zhongshe over at all cost, or else what that would be sent over next might not just be a simple piece of fabric anymore but... Seeing that Zhongshe recognized the object, the young man smiled gleefully. However, before he could finish his words, a sharp pain assaulted his abdomen, causing his face to distort hideously. Pang! Zhongxian's powerful kick had left the young man's organs jolting under the powerful impact. If the slightest bit more force were to be exerted, the other party's organs might just end up being shattered on the spot. Pada! The young man flew several dozen meters across the street before skidding to a halt. Clutching his abdomen, his entire body was scrunched together like a shrimp from the excruciating pain. Chapter 1145, Landscaper as a Transcender. Zhongxian had grown up being inculcated by the positive values of his previous world. As such, he preferred to avoid confrontation, choosing to resolve all problem amiably wherever possible. But all dragons had scales, one which couldn't be touched, and those who flout the rules would have to pay with their lives. Sun Qiong had been with him ever since the time he was at Tianxian Kingdom. Despite the other party's indolence when it came to cultivation, the other party had always dealt with all kinds of miscellaneous matters for him skillfully without a single word of complaint. If not for the other party, he would probably have been bogged down by all sorts of things, and there was no way he would have been able to devote his attention to cultivation and achieve so much within such a short period of time. It could be said that Butler Sun was one of the most important people in his life, and he viewed him as a family member as well, just like Wang Ying, Zhao Ya, and the others. Yet, the fellow before him actually dared to threaten him using Sun Qiong's life, so how could he possibly not fly into a rage? "You dare to kick me?" Not expecting that the other party would dare to make a move on him even when they had a hostage in hand, the black-robed young man struggled weakly to his feet and glared at Zhongxian with eyes brimming with hostility. "I want you to die!" Roaring furiously, the young man charged forward, but before he could finish his words, he suddenly felt his entire body tensing up. Someone had grabbed him by his neck and pulled him up. Following which, a pair of frosty eyes appeared before him. "If you want to die, I can fulfill your wish right now." The frosty voice paired with the killing intent left the black-robed young man paling in fear. The words which he had wanted to speak stifled in his mouth, rendering him incapable of utter anything at all. Having undergone life-and-death situations before, the black-robed young man could tell that the other party was deadly serious about this matter. If he were to dare speak another word of the matter, the other party would very well have him killed. "Who is your old master, and where is Sun Qiong at the moment?" Zhongxian uttered frostily. "I." The black-robed young man shuddered upon hearing those words completely devoid of warmth. Fearing for his life, he quickly replied, "Oh, our old master is the first king of the Qingyuan Empire, King Zhongqing." "King Zhongqing?" Zhongxian frowned. "Why did he kidnap my butler?" It had only been 3 days since he arrived at Qingyuan City, and his activities had been mainly centered around the Spirit Awakener Guild, Combat Master Hall, and Terpsichore Guild. He had never been anywhere else other than those 3 places, so how in the world did he manage to offend the so-called first king of Qingyuan Empire? If he hadn't offended the other party, he couldn't think of a reason why the other party would go to the extent of provoking a reputable master teacher like himself. To kidnap his men without any warning was as good as challenging his dignity, and not to mention, the other party even sent a small fry over to threaten him. He must be really tired of living. "I am just a servant, I really don't know anything else." The black-robed man shuddered. "Lead the way." Seeing that the other party earnestly didn't know anything at all, Zhongxian dropped the young man on the ground and bellowed. "Yes." The black-robed man replied fearfully. He dared not pull his weight as he did previously anymore, and he quickly headed forward. "Zhongsha, I have heard of King Zhongqing before. He's not an easy figure to deal with, you must be absolutely careful around him." While following behind the black-robed young man, Yu Fei warned with a deep frown. Even though she wasn't interested in politics, as a princess of Hongyuan Empire, she still knew a thing or two about Qingyuan Empire. "Oh." Seeing that Yu Fei knew about King Zhongqing, Zhongxian immediately turned his gaze to her. This first king of Qingyuan Empire used to be a humble peasant, but 20 years ago, the otherworldly demonic tribe somehow managed to find a way to arrive at the Master-Teacher continent, and they planned to launch an invasion. The Qingyuan Empire Master-Teacher Pavilion, Combat Master Hall, and royal family swiftly learned of the matter and dispatched their men to eradicate the otherworldly demons. It was an extremely bitter fight, the 3 powers suffered great losses, and the head of the Combat Master Hall, Hall Master Xing, even suffered grievous wounds in the fight and nearly lost his life. Back then, the Emperor of Qingyuan Empire, Chu Tianxing, personally led the forces of the Qingyuan royal family into the fight, but a sudden ambush by the otherworldly demons left him in a truly dangerous position. At that desperate situation, King Zhongqing suddenly appeared and massacred the otherworldly demons, saving Emperor Chu Tianxing from that seemingly hopeless situation. After that incident, he continued to accrue merit after merit, and within just a short 20 years, he managed to rise from a mere peasant into a conferred king. In the entire Qingyuan Empire, he's definitely the #1 figure of the external kings too. Yu Fei'er explained. The otherworldly demonic tribe attempted to invade Qingyuan Empire? Zhong Xian frowned. Thinking back, the wound on Hall Master Xing's primordial spirit was indeed left behind in a fight roughly 20 years back too. That was in line with the details of the story. Emperor Chu Tianxing is bound to be protected by countless experts, and he probably is a powerful cultivator himself too. If the otherworldly demons were able to corner him that far, just how powerful must King Zhongqing be to be able to break him out from that desperate situation? Zhong Xian frowned. Even Hall Master Xing had nearly succumbed to the otherworldly demons and lost his life, so how did a humble fellow manage to break Emperor Chu Tianxing out from the encirclement of the otherworldly demonic tribe? I'm not too sure about the details. Wait, I seem to recall my father discussing this matter with another person before. If I recall correctly, King Zhongqing used poison. Yu Fei'er exclaimed. Poison? Zhong Xian frowned. Is King Zhongqing a poison master? If King Zhongqing was truly a poison master, then it might really be possible for him to pull such a matter off. The reason why poison masters were so deeply feared was because of their ability to fend against multiple enemies simultaneously. As long as they were to play their cards right, they could easily eradicate a group of experts with their poison. Just take the 10 kings of the Qingtian lineage for example. Back then, he was only at nascent Saint Pinnacle, and any one of them could have easily killed him in a direct battle. Yet, nearly all of them ended up dying from the poison within his Heaven's Path Zhenqi anyway. I'm not too sure whether he is a poison master or not, but there is one thing particularly sinister regarding him. It's uncommon for an individual outside of the royal family to be conferred a king, so naturally, there were many influential officials who opposed King Zhongqing. Yet, over the past 20 years, they had either disappeared or died. As such, King Zhongqing currently wields immense influence in the royal court. Furthermore, due to his merit of having saved Emperor Chu Tianxing, he is well favored, and there's no longer anyone who dares to confront him directly in Qingyuan Empire anymore, Yu Fei'er said. Zhong Xian nodded as the frown on his forehead deepened. Putting aside whether that fellow was truly a poison master or not, the fact still stood that he wasn't acquainted with the other party. It simply didn't make sense for the other party to kidnap Sun Qiong. Considering that he has gone to the extent of kidnapping Sun Qiong, it goes to say that he has absolutely no fear of my identity as a 6-star master teacher and the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. It would be best for you two to stay out of this matter. I'll deal with this alone. Zhong Xian paused for a moment before saying. Regardless of what the other party was up to, it was clear that the other party was aiming right for him. Since that was the case, there was no need for these two to bear this risk along with him. Zhongshe, you are my teacher. As your student, how can I flee and leave to face danger by yourself? I would be unworthy of being a master teacher if I were to do so. Luo Chichi stepped forward and spoke determinedly. She was Zhong Xian's apothecary and blacksmith student. While she wasn't his direct disciple, and they had never officially acknowledged their relationship, there were still the bonds between a teacher and student between them. I won't leave either. I'm willing to brave through any danger with you. Yu Fei'er looked straight into Zhong Xian's eyes and said. This. Seeing that the wills of the duo were unwavering, Zhong Xian shook his head and whipped out 2 pills from his storage ring. These pills are antidotes which I have personally forged, and they are capable of resolving most poisons. If you are intent on tagging along, consume one first. This way, you shouldn't be in any danger even if King Zhongqing is really a poison master. The antidote which Zhong Xian spoke of was just an ordinary pill, but it was infused with his Heaven's Path Zhenqi. Yuan, the duo knew that Zhong Xian wouldn't allow them to follow him if they were to refuse, so they swallowed the pill without any hesitation. All right, let's go. All this while, they had been conversing through Zhenqi telepathy, so it didn't affect their movement. Following behind the black-robed young man, it didn't take long before a massive manor appeared before their eyes. The manor was truly huge. While it couldn't be compared with behemoths like the Combat Master Hall, it was definitely one of the largest and grandest manor in Qingyuan City. The interior of the manor was filled with all kinds of formations, and even before coming close to it, one could feel the surrounding spiritual energy gravitating towards the manor. Without a doubt, the manor was definitely a top-notch land for cultivation. Even ordinary men would find their lifespan lengthening by living in such an environment. "This is the manor of our old master," the black-robed man said before walking forward to discreetly whisper some things to the guard standing by the door. The guard glared at Zhongxian and the others for a moment before heading in. Not too long later, the guard returned and gestured with a nod. "This way please," the black-robed man gestured forward politely. A vicious glint flickered swiftly across his eyes as he turned his head to lead the way into the manor. Zhongxian noticed it, but he decided to feign ignorance. With Yu Fei'er and Luo Chichi following behind him, he headed into the manor as well. As expected of the manor of the first king of a conferred empire, it was far grander than the royal palace of Hongyuan Empire. Even its pavements were crafted out of valuable ores. Every single part of the manor screamed of extravagance. On top of powerful formations, it seems the entire manor has been specially designed by a landscaper. Shortly after entering the manor, Luo Chichi remarked, "Landscaper?" This was the first time Zhongxian was hearing of this name. Yuan. Just like spirit awakener and herbologist, landscaper isn't considered to be a unique occupation either. However, due to the unique capabilities that landscapers possess, they are still deeply welcomed by influential powers and clans as honorary guests. Luo Chichi said, "Oh, are there landscapers in Hongyuan Empire?" Zhongxian turned to look at Yu Fei'er curiously. "I haven't heard of such an occupation before." Yu Fei'er shook her head. "I learned of the existence of this occupation from an ancient record." Luo Chichi replied with a smile. It said that landscapers are able to assess the geographical terrain, geomancy, and many other factors of the environment to design structures, be it residences, sects, formations, or mechanisms, and fuse them perfectly together, such that they complemented one another to exert the maximum strength possible. If a power were to have its base designed by a landscaper, its overall defenses could potentially be enhanced by several-fold. But of course, it is an extremely rare occupation, and it doesn't have a complete heritage either, so I can't be too sure about the matter. It's in view to the exquisite layout of the manor and the perfect harmony of the various structures and formations that I made such a deduction. You're right, the harmony of the various structures within this manor is indeed exquisite. Zhongxian nodded in agreement. As a 7-star pinnacle formation master and a possessor of the Eye of Insight, it went without saying that he would be able to easily notice what Luo Chichi saw. He had been to Hongyuan Royal Palace, and as numerous as the formations there were, they were all separate entities from one another. Each formation had to be manually triggered in order to come to life. On the other hand, the formations within King Zhongqing Manor were interconnected with one another, as well as the structures in the area. If they were to just trigger a single formation, they might find other formations coming to life as well, swiftly cornering them. If the formations within Hongyuan Empire were said to be mouse traps, effective only when in contact, the formations within King Zhongqing Manor were most definitely dominoes. Touch a single one of them, and it could cause a chain reaction with devastating outcomes. What Luo Chichi had said could very well be true. The manor had been worked on by landscapers. Just as Zhongxian was still in the midst of contemplating over the matter, a bunch of footsteps suddenly sounded right in front of the black-robed young man. Following which, dozens of guards abruptly rushed out. In the blink of an eye, they had the trio tightly encircled. "Brat, you sure acted arrogantly a moment ago. Give him a good beating. Let him know that we from the King Zhongqing Manor are not to be trifled with." The black-robed young man sneered savagely as he hid behind the crowd. When he heard that he had to invite the other party here, he thought that it would be an easy assignment. He had never thought that he would be nearly kicked to death. From that point onward, he was filled with nothing but utmost antagonism for the young man before him. Thus, back when he was still at the doorstep, he secretly informed the guard to prepare an ambush. Voila! Upon hearing those words, the guards began walking forward as they brandished the sharp weapons in their hands threateningly. Their movements seemed to be aligned with the surrounding formations, causing an overwhelming pressure to fall upon Zhongxian and the others. Chapter 1146, King Zhongqing Teacher. Luo Chichi's face warped in shock, and she hurriedly stood in front of Zhongxian to shield him. Individually, these half-saint guards were no threat at all. However, when their prowess was enhanced by the surrounding formations and the perfect harmony crafted by a landscaper, the nature of the matter became completely different. Even a Saint 3 Dan expert would find it difficult to flee from their combined might. There's no need to panic. Seeing the anxious state the young lady was in, Zhongxian pulled her behind him before turning to the black-robed young man. His lips curled up as he asked, "You wish to teach me a lesson? Considering that our old master has specially invited you over, I'll allow you to keep your life for the time being. However, you won't be getting away from here without suffering some pain," the black-robed young man sneered. The old master had said that if the other party refused to heed his words, he had his permission to teach the other party a lesson. There was no need to hold back just because the other party was a master teacher. It was for this reason that he dared to pull a thing such as this on Zhongxian. Pain? Zhongxian shook his head and sighed deeply. "I was considering whether I should let you off with just a kick, but it seems like you just won't learn. It seems like there's no need for me to hold back anymore then." Right after saying those words, Zhongxian snapped his fingers. Pa! A crisp sound echoed resoundingly through the manor. Initially, the black-robed young man thought that Zhongxian was just feigning calm, but in the next moment, he suddenly felt excruciating pain assaulting every single part of his body. Pu! A mouthful of blood spewed from his mouth, and in an instant, his face flushed completely pale. He turned to face Zhongxian with a look of horror. "Why you poisoned me?" The answer was already apparent at this point, but what was truly fearsome was that he couldn't even fathom when the other party had poisoned him. With his body twitching from pain, the black-robed young man hurriedly whipped out 2 antidotes from his storage ring and swallowed it. However, the antidotes only seemed to have further worsened his pain. Cold sweat gushed down his head, and he felt as if he would simply cave into the pain at any moment. "Poison? When did you see me poison you? If I were to say, you probably just ate something unclean. However, worry not. I am a capable physician, so why don't you allow me to treat you instead?" Zhongxian waved his hand leisurely as he said. Naturally, as a master teacher, he couldn't possibly admit to being a poison master. "You!" Veins popped out on the temples of the black-robed young man as he clenched his jaws so forcefully that it seemed like his teeth would chip. He was tempted to make a move and end the life of the young man before him there and then, but eventually, he clenched his fists tightly and spat, "Let them pass." He had wanted to teach the other party a lesson, but at this point, the tides were no longer in his favor anymore. As indignant as he was, he could only let this matter go. Yes. The guards quickly split apart to open up a road for Zhongxian and the others to pass. With a smile, Zhongxian stepped forward, and just as he was about to walk by the black-robed young man, he placed his mouth before the other party's ear and whispered in a silent tone that only the latter could hear. "The only way to alleviate my poison is to have your face slapped viciously. Otherwise, the pain will gradually intensify until it reaches a point where you can't bear it any longer and snap." The black-robed young man was startled for a moment before he regained himself and sneered, "The only way to alleviate the poison is to have my face slapped? Ha, do you take me for a fool? How can there be such a poison in the world? You're right, I'm just fooling around with you. I'll be going ahead first, so have fun." Not bothering to explain anything, Zhongxian left with the 2 ladies. "You!" The black-robed young man thought that Zhongxian would at least attempt to justify his words, but who could have thought that the latter would admit to lying to him so blatantly and shamelessly? This unexpected response left him stunned instead. Just as he was at a loss of what to do, his body suddenly churned up once more, and he felt as if his organs were being gradually corroded by sulfur. Pu! Yet another mouthful of blood spewed from his mouth. At this rate, I could really die. It felt as if his life force was gradually being sapped from his body, and this made him realize that he was at an imminent threat of death. Cold sweat immediately flowed down his back. Desperate, he turned to a nearby guard and ordered, "You, come over here. I want you to slap my face." Slap your face? Butler Cheen, I dare not to. The guard was horrified to hear such words, and he quickly lowered his head humbly and responded, "Hurry up, do it." The face of the black-robed man distorted hideously from the excruciating pain. At this point, he had no other choice. He wasn't prepared to face death yet, so he could only heed whatever the other party told him, even though there was a good chance that it was a lie. No one had heard his conversation with Zhong Xian, so everyone was taken aback by Butler Cheen's abrupt request. No one here could have imagined that Butler Cheen would actually have masochistic tendencies. Appalled and speechless, they stared at one another, not knowing what to do. "Hurry up and do it, or else I'll have every single one of you killed." Seeing that none of the guards were making a move, Butler Cheen roared furiously. "Yes." A guard stepped forward, and gritting his teeth in resolution, he raised his hand and slapped Butler Cheen's face forcefully. "Pa!" Butler Cheen's face immediately swelled up. "Chem." While there was burning sensation on his face, the excruciating pain within his body seemed to have lessened considerably. Could it be that the other party isn't lying? There's truly such a poison in the world. Butler Cheen was thought in astonishment as he bellowed, "Continue hitting me, don't stop." "Yes." Fearing that Butler Cheen would really claim their lives, the guard could only continue striking with all his might. Pa 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 pa. With just a few slaps, Butler Cheen's face had already swollen to a point where it bore no resemblance to how it was previously. However, it did seem like the poison within his body had alleviated significantly. The excruciating pain from before was no longer as unbearable anymore. It really is effectively. Enduring the stinging pain on his cheeks, Butler Cheen heaved a sigh of relief. It was rather embarrassing to be slapped by others, especially before such a crowd, but his fear of death had surpassed all of his other emotions. He had the guard slap him a few more dozen times, and after confirming that he was fine, he stood up once more. Hatred and hostility began welling up in the depths of his eyes once more. "Damn that fellow, how dare he humiliate me with such a poison? I hereby vow that I'll surely return this favor to him tenfold, or else I shall renounce my humanity." Butler Cheen clenched his jaws furiously. As the loyal follower of the powerful King Zhongqing, the butler of the massive residence, when had he suffered such grievance before? "Let it be clear that if I were to hear a single word about this matter anywhere else, I'll have all of your tongues severed." Butler Cheen turned to the guard and harumphed coldly, "Why yes, we won't speak of this matter to another soul." The guards quickly lowered their heads subserviently and replied. Harumphing coldly, Butler Cheen hurriedly walked down the path where Zhong Xian had headed to previously. "Zhongshe, that fellow won't let this matter rest just like that. Are you really going to let him off like this?" Walking closely behind Zhong Xian, Fei couldn't help but ask worriedly. While Zhong Xian may seem like a leisurely and easygoing person most of the time, he wasn't the type to show mercy to those who had crossed him. Back then, she had crossed him too, and he forced her into becoming his maid through trickery. That matter had truly left her fuming mad for a very long time. It was apparent with a look that the black-robed young man was a vicious character, and to such a person go after a complete fallout. This truly wasn't Zhong Xian's style. To dare to confront the principal of a master teacher academy head-on, a 6-star pinnacle master teacher, there's no doubt that King Zhongqing must have prepared a foolproof plan. At this point, it might play to our advantage to spare that fellow, at least for now. Zhong Xian replied Fei telepathically. If it had been on any other occasion, even if he didn't kill that fellow, he would make sure to pummel him to the point where even limping was impossible. However, with Sun Qiong in the other party's hands, it was best for him to proceed carefully for the time being. There was only one path that led to the main hall, so it didn't matter whether there was anyone bringing him along. Very soon, they arrived at their destination. A hall that towered several dozen meters high had 4 thick and bulky pillars supporting its entrance. Each of these pillars was at least 3 meters big, and from afar, the grandeur was truly impressive. "You must be Zhongshe. Our old master has been waiting inside for you for some time now." A guard stepped forward and ushered Zhongxian in. Nodding, the trio made their way into the hall. The hall was exceptionally spacious, stretching for more than 1,000 square meters large. The ceiling was embedded with night illumination pearls of all sizes, bringing radiance to the insides of the hall. Seated on the main seat in the room was a middle-aged man with tanned skin and eagle-like eyes. Even without coming close, one could already feel the aura of authority and bloodshed that he emanated. It was clear that he was a powerful man, no stranger to slaughter. Without a doubt, he was the famous King Zhongqing. Not too far away from King Zhongqing sat an elder, who seemed to be in his 60s. The elder wasn't too tall, and he was a little hunched over even. However, his presence felt similar to a silent, unmoving painting. If one didn't see him with one's physical eyes, one might not even have noticed him. King Zhongqing is a primordial spirit realm pinnacle expert, and the hunched-over elder seems to be even stronger than him. In the blink of an eye, Zhongxian managed to assess his current situation. King Zhongqing's aura felt condensed and powerful, and it was imbued with overwhelming killing intent at that. However, in terms of scariness, the hunched-back elder was definitely an individual whom Zhongxian had to guard carefully against. Even though he didn't use his eye of insight to assess the other party's strength yet, the fact that the other party was able to conceal his breath so perfectly indicated that his fighting prowess had already reached an incredible level. Most likely, the other party was even stronger than Wu Shu, even after the latter's breakthrough in the Qiu Palace. "You are Zhongxian, Zhongshe?" While he was assessing the other party was also assessing him. When the trio finally reached the center of the hall, King Zhongqing turned to look at him with a frown. "That's right." Zhongxian nodded as he walked up to a guest seat by the side and sat down. Even though the other party wielded great authority in his hands, Zhongxian didn't pale in comparison either, so there was no need for him to fear. It was one thing if the other party didn't provoke him, but if the other party didn't know what was better for him, he didn't mind flipping the entire Qingyuan city upside down. To be honest, they should already be counting their blessing that he hadn't gone around causing trouble. To actually attempt to provoke him, they are truly courting death. "Did I give you permission to sit?" King Zhongqing uttered with a cold, authoritative voice. His powerful presence swept across the room, commanding others to obey him. "I am a 6-star pinnacle master teacher, as well as a principal of a master teacher academy. In terms of standing, I am on par with any 7-star master teacher. Not even your emperor is worthy of dictating where and when I should sit, so who do you think you are?" Zhongxian raised his eyelid and glanced at King Zhongqing coldly. Upon hearing those words, Yu Fei and Luo Qiqi's face twitched as cold sweat filled their palms. To act so brazenly despite being within the other party's territory, even going to the extent of criticizing the other party. Wasn't Zhongshe a little too gutsy? However, master teachers also had their own dignity to uphold. If Zhongshe couldn't even stand his own ground after what the other party had done, how could he stand before his students and lecture others? 6-star pinnacle master teacher? H, you still dare to say that you are a master teacher? Flouting the rules of the master teacher pavilion, colluding with the poison masters of the poison hall. Do you honestly think that no one will know of these, principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy? King Zhongqing harumphed coldly. Colluding with the poison masters? Zhongxian glanced at King Zhongqing and sneered. Watch your words, King Zhongqing. You should know the consequences of slandering a master teacher. Master teachers mustn't be sullied. Slandering a master teacher was an extremely grievous crime. Even if the other party was the first king of the Qingyuan Empire, he could still be beheaded on the spot over this matter. Slander. It seems like you simply won't concede until you see your own coffin, King Zhongqing said as he raised his hand. Voila! The sounds of rattling chain echoed in the room, and a plump figure was dragged into the room. Young master. Upon seeing Zhongxian, the plump figure immediately shouted. However, despite shouting with all of his might, his voice sounded feeble and powerless. Sun Qiong. Upon seeing the state that Sun Qiong was in, Zhongxian's face turned livid. There was not a single part of Sun Qiong which could be said to be in good shape. It was apparent that he had been severely tortured. There were even 2 golden soul lock piercing through his chest, preventing him from exerting any strength at all. What do you mean by this? Zhongxian turned to look at King Zhongqing with narrowed eyes. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.